everyone, today is Thursday the 23rd of May 2019. This is The Gap episode 468. I'm Luke Lawrie. Joe Bureau is on holidays, but that's alright because we got Nathan Lawrence to fill in today. How you going, Nate?
I'm feeling weird being on camera, not going to lie to you. Am I supposed to look at the camera while I talk so it looks like I'm actually talking to you or the audience? Is that how it works?
My camera is a little bit, like, it's up there, and I look at my screen because I'm generally looking at you.
Yeah, right?
The other person.
Because you're being respectful of my image.
But or even it's a little bit to the right because I don't put it in the middle because I've got to see what we're talking about.
Yeah, webcams are weird.
Yeah, and then I'll look to the right. Like if you see me looking to the right, it's because I'm looking at our production to make sure it's still working.
Oh, that's good. I've tried to shut down all my distractions so that I should just be staring straight ahead. But we'll see how that goes when Pat inevitably will interrupt,
causing chaos in the background.
Your cat's looking very chill in the background, though.
Which one? That one? There's also another one here that you just can't see. Just behind.
The chill-out couch.
Yes. Anyway, how you going, man? You started a new podcast.
I did. Oh, man, we're leading with that. Fuck yeah. It's called Here's My Movie. You can find it at here'smymovie.com. I had to open the tab up on the right because I thought I'd forget it. Amazing. I can't, like, if you go search for Here's My Movie on Google, you won't find us. If you go search for Here's My Movie podcast on Google, you won't find us yet. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, it's a movie podcast. We review movies, we being me and my lovely girlfriend Katie, who's also a movie buff. And our little point of difference is that instead of just criticizing it and tearing it to shreds, or even for movies that we love, the idea is that it's like, okay, if we were creating this movie, or if we got to do a do-over with this movie, what would we change? What would we do differently? And sometimes it's little things, but often it's big things. And yeah, it's pretty fun. We've done five episodes. Jesus, I'm glad I had that open. I almost blanked on that. And we're looking to record weekly, but with travel and sickness and stuff, as I'm sure you guys know, it becomes a challenge sometimes to pump out weekly content.
We don't miss podcasts on here.
Yeah, what do you do when you're sick? You just cough. You cough your way through it.
I mean, luckily we generally have a whole week to work on.
Yeah.
If the problem comes when we leave it to like the Wednesday or the Thursday and someone starts getting sick.
Yeah.
Usually that's a bit of an issue. We did miss a podcast a couple of weeks back when we were going through the whole Borderlands stuff because we were preparing to go on that trip, and so we hadn't played anything. Nothing had come out really, and I think that's the first one we've missed in probably a couple of years.
That must have felt weird.
Yeah. Like we have our break during Christmas where we take 3 weeks, 4 weeks off. And then come back and we're like, we played the fucking forest and it was amazing.
That's
what we
every
do
year.
Every Christmas.
Yeah, I remember I was on the last one for last year, and it was a couple of hours. I think it was short.
It was like 10 hours for us.
I still wake up screaming with nightmares of that. Whenever you guys ask me, hey, do you want to be on the show? I'm like, I don't have a spare time.
I can't believe it's been 6 months.
I've done well.
You've avoided us.
Yeah, done pretty well.
Yep.
But now Job's away, right?
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Interesting podcast. So you've done things like Terminator, Alien. Did you do Alien?
No. We've done Terminator, Last Jedi, Prometheus, Shazam, and Us. We kind of when we started it, the newer movies were like kind of ripe for this kind of format, and so we did those. But the intention was always to do the older movies. So there's things that people have seen, so there's less concerned about, because obviously we go deep on spoilers. So yeah, we don't really want to ruin anyone's viewing experience, and I think that starting out with those, while timely, wasn't like, it was definitely not what we wanted to gun for. So we've got a list of something like 60, maybe 70 movies that we want to do that are all kind of like classics, ranging from utter trash fire movies to, middling and average, to even some ones on there that I think Katie's added that I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. That's perfect. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, that was what I was thinking of. He's read my mind. Alien 3, the perfect Alien movie.
David Fincher's Alien 3.
That's how they introduced it, right? David Fincher presents From the Twisted Mind. He was a nobody back then, wasn't he? That was his first feature, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
And he came from music videos or something. He's had an okay career since. It didn't hurt him too much doing Alien 3.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I know we've been pimping it out quite a bit, so
Oh, thank
hopefully
you.
things go well for you on there.
We've started pimping
Um,
you guys too. Like, yeah,
oh,
great. I'm
smash
sure
that like button.
those 10 or 20 people that are regularly listening to us will hopefully jump over here too.
Nice, nice. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. Surprisingly, you being on the show, but
Even if we
I've
did,
actually got a bunch of stuff here as well, which is unusual because usually around this time of the year it can be a bit slow and not really much happening. And I guess some of the stuff we've got here is just old stuff, some new stuff, things that are coming with E3 around the corner. So yeah, it should be. There's a lot here, so let's kick into it. I might start off with Mordhau
have you been playing?
because I haven't played it since that first night that we jumped in at like midnight.
We were
Playing
pretty
for-
boozed.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
boozed up, and I think there was three of us playing, and we were running around and whatnot. I think you know my feelings on it. Like at the time, it seemed like it was leaning towards this style of play where the people that have played it more are sort of have been rewarded in terms of like getting extra gear and being able to put like abilities together and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like the sort of normal classes seem to be a bit less powerful because you were running up against all these different enemy types, being like, all right, what's bloodlust? What is that? Why is everybody running with bloodlust all the time? Like I felt like we could hold our own way, but it felt like that there was still a bit of like that feeling of the more you played it, you've got an advantage over somebody else. Obviously, like I'm talking about skill levels and whatnot, but you'd still want it to sort of be like an open play field. Like if I started a brand new game and someone else has been playing for 20 hours, I don't want them to have more powerful gear than me.
Yeah, and they definitely didn't really push that whole angle of creating your own custom class up front. And it's something that even another couple of play sessions afterwards, I hadn't really mucked around with because I thought it was going to be too intimidating and there's a whole lot of options. But the more you dig into it, the cleverer it is. Like they've made the gameplay impacting stuff bold when it comes to your appearance so that you can't like, oh, do I have to put armor on every bit? And they've got that, what was that Call of Duty thing that Treyarch introduced, like pick 10 or whatever?
Yeah.
They've kind of got that idea going on with a limited number of points and that particular thing that you mentioned, that perk Bloodlust, which did you figure out what it does, by the way?
Yeah, at the moment, unless they changed it, whenever you kill somebody, you get full health back.
Which is a massive deal, especially
nuts.
when we're playing together, and you're coming up against this one dude and you see him covered in blood and he just cuts your buddy down. You're like, oh, you go for it, go for the kill because he's almost dead.
been hit through
And then
2
it's like,
times,
nope,
so.
he's immediately gone back to 100% health. So yeah, so definitely it changes things, and not having transparency on that, they didn't really touch on it in the tutorial was odd. It definitely was odd. I think I would have preferred to start in a server that was just like you said, the idea of like just default classes versus default classes, or even a noob playing ground. Not that impacted the enjoyment for me. It definitely created more of a skill gap and more moments of screaming bullshit. Like, what? He should be fucking dead. How many times do we have to hit this guy?
Fucking dice.
Yeah, fucking dice, which is just the go-to phrase. But the cool thing is that like we were still having fun, right? Like out of the gate, still having fun, still plenty of opportunities to stab people in the back and get on a horse and do some crazy stuff. I used to be a big chivalry fan. Like I put in way too many hours into that. Buddy of mine used to come over and I'd put together a Frankenstein computer so that we could play like together in the same servers. And we've probably collectively sunk 300 or 400 hours into that game, usually drunk. That is very much Mordhau, that game. But the difference is that the developers decided to not address glitches. There were glitches that were discovered or maybe even introduced that allowed people to kind of have unfair advantages, and they'd be able to hit you over the back of their head by swinging certain ways. So you'd come up behind them and they'd be hitting you, or they would do rainbow strikes, I think was the term, and they'd spin around in a certain way and it would exploit the trajectory of their sword to make it like kind of like a 360-degree thing. So it just kind of became a bit farcical. Like it went from what felt like this really well balanced medieval combat simulator in that you had to blocking wasn't a timing thing. I mean, that was part of it, but you also had to have the center of their weapon in your screen, so you're kind of like flicking your aim around plus timing. So there was definitely a skill gap to this thing where I'm pretty sure the developers even ended up saying, like, we're not patching it out. We're not patching out these glitches, and they almost treated it like it was like something that you had to learn, like, which I think in games like, Tribes, yeah, or even bunny hopping to a certain extent in Counter-Strike, even that, I mean, that got too far.
Or Quake, something like that.
Apex Legends has a form of bunny hopping now, I understand it too, right? Like when you're healing, you can...
Yeah, I feel like they should change that part, though.
I think they will get rid of it, though, right? But like for now, that's not super game-breaking for me. Like that's still manageable. But when it utterly impacts your ability to do damage, and whether you're looking at someone and you're behind them and they're hitting you when they're not looking at you, it just felt dumb. And so their hardline on refusing to fix it like ruined that for me. I'm not getting any enjoyment out of this game because the servers were just full of dipshits doing that. Fast forward to Mordhau, and I was very cautious of it, and so I read through the reviews, and people straight up addressed that and said, if you hated the glitches of Chivalry, this is for you. And I mean, it was on mostly positive on Steam, and we bought it. And usually I'll not be interested in those kinds of games. Like $40, wasn't it? I think the investment for an indie game that might be dead, tomorrow. But the more I read up on it, the more developer videos that I watched, and devs were saying, like, we removed this feature that we liked because it was too exploitable. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So they're actually interested in making the combat fair, and there's a skill gap in the ceiling and all that sort of stuff, but they didn't want glitches to rule. And you'll notice it as soon as, like, for having come from Chivalry, you run up behind someone and they do this swing, and you like instinctively try to back off. Oh, they're gonna hit me, and they just don't. It doesn't register any damage, and you're like, okay, cool. And that becomes part of, the dance of like being like, if you're going to expose your back to something, you're probably going to get stabbed in the back. I mean, we were playing the Frontlines mode, right, which is like Battlefield, 64 players.
Yeah.
And Mayhem. But like within that Mayhem, you can still have a lot of fun if you're like, depending, it didn't matter what class you were playing, like as an archer. Right. I mean, you were cleaning up as an archer, weren't you?
I was just shooting everybody basically.
Yeah. And then depending on what team you play, like if you're playing on blue team and they get covered in blood, they look red. So
they look red anyway.
Friendly fire happens quite a bit. The chat is utterly toxic. Just like turn that off. There's not a very helpful community, but there's definitely a lot of fun to be had.
Right.
And you can start in duels. I think Joby preferred duels. Which is probably a better introduction than what we did, was jumping in the deep end on Frontlines. But I think the most fun was Frontlines, especially because it definitely has that Battlefield feeling, particularly with like destructibility, and you'll go to throw a spear at one dude and a horse will run past and you hit the spear and you like knock the guy off instead, and like stuff like that. It's like, whoa, like those only in Battlefield moments they used to say, is like there's kind of a bit of that going on in Mordhau.
Sure. Yeah. I guess we didn't mention what Mordhau is if you've not heard of it, but it's just like a medieval first-person fighting game.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Or you can go third person, but I never did that.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, you hit P and it snaps to third person.
Right, I didn't know that.
I've been watching a bunch of videos. I've seen some people using it, but it doesn't really... I mean, obviously the field of view comes back a little bit more, but it doesn't really seem to be that advantageous. In fact, like there are points where your body obviously gets in the way of what you're looking at in terms of where their weapon is. So, yeah, I just didn't really see the benefit. Maybe when you're on horseback, but outside of that, nah.
Can you see behind you, though, or to the side? Because that's important.
It just like pulls the field of view back a little bit more, so you've got more vision on this left and right. But no, you couldn't. Yeah, it was pretty close up, so you couldn't really see anyone who was behind you and stuff like that. Not like Battlefield with the way that it handles third person with tanks, where if someone's in third person and you sneak up behind them, the turret starts spinning. You're like, yeah, okay, they're in third person. Like, be in first person, you bastard.
Yeah, I never liked that in Battlefield.
Well,
I think it should be set to like what you can see.
I think they should be able to drive in third person, but whenever they shoot, they have to be in first person, like aiming and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like remove the reticule entirely, and that way it forces them to, if they're going to stop in camp, to go to first person, and maybe to be paranoid and jump back to third person every once in a while. But there's definitely certain maps, I mean, like Panzerstorm and Battlefield 5, where they snipe. They play like snipers, and I think that's not how the tanks were meant to be played. and it kind of makes it really boring. I mean, it makes them plain bait, but yeah, when you chance upon one and you want to kill it, and it just the turret starts turning around and they drop their mines and their smoke because they've been fighting in third person, so they see you. I don't think it's particularly fair.
No. Speaking of Battlefield, go off on a little sidetrack. Did you read the new changes today that are coming out?
I did read the patch notes. Stepping away from attrition.
Right, I know that's pretty big. I think that's a core component of this Battlefield.
Attrition?
Yeah.
I've noticed a couple of YouTubers that I follow have gone all inflammatory on it. You know, like, DICE is killing attrition. I'm like, they're really not. In fact, for me, and I don't think it works for the ammo crate. I think it only works for the medic crate, right? Is that what you read as well?
They've got an ammo crate and a medic crate change.
Yeah, but you can grab ammo off people's backs. But for the medic crate, you can drop it and it has a field of effect where it heals. I'm okay with that, if only because the medic crate was fucking useless. And with the new system of not the new system, it's taken from Battlefield Hardline, the only good thing it introduced, which was you could grab, supplies from medics.
From people.
Yeah, which was good because on pub servers, people are douchebags and they're selfish. So that was a cool feature, but you have to have the crate. And there's no point incentive. And the best way to get people to do stuff in Battlefield is to incentivize them with points. And that's usually what they do pretty well. So I'm glad that they're not getting rewarded for that. But it still would have meant then why am I picking the medic crate over the bandages, which you can, Kobe and unlimited, and they don't seem to have a cooldown like the crate. So they've actually made the crate more viable. But I don't think that. Yeah, I can see that it's a slight step away from attrition, but I don't think that changes any of the other ways that you interact with stuff. And I think it's a positive step because, that crate there was no point to have it outside of challenges. You're a bad medic if you had it because people would be asking for health and you're like, oh, it's on a cooldown, bro, and you can't see that, and I look like a jackass.
Yep.
I think I used it once or twice, and I'm like, never again for challenges.
No, I think ammo crate is fine, but the medic crate was pretty useless.
Well, the ammo crate gave you special, like the gadget stuff. Yeah, it didn't give you grenades, which was good because Battlefield's had a grenade spam problem for far too long, and I think they've curbed it pretty fucking well with Battlefield 5, even from launch. So there was definitely a reason to pick the ammo crate, but there was never a reason to pick the medic crate. But now, if people want to lock down an area or they're defending and you kind of drop it and they can duck down and heal, I'm like, okay, I can make sense of that.
Right. Yeah, man. The other changes where they added some new stuff into. I feel like they were the two big ones that I saw. They added some more stuff into Firestorm, like some extra areas.
Yeah.
But in saying that, like Firestorm's pretty dead at this stage. They made some changes early on in the week, server side, or it might have been last week when I tried it. Basically, what they did was they lowered the amount of players required to be in a queue for a server to spin up.
Right.
Before it was around about 50, I would say. Something high. So about like 80% of the players need to be queuing for it to spin up a server. And then what they also did was they changed the amount of time for the server to start ticking down. So once you got to 32 players in that server, it would start ticking down from a minute. And then if the server did fill up, it'd immediately go to 10 seconds remaining or something like that. Which, this is stuff that should have been in there from the start. And it's one of the big reasons why that game mode is dead at the moment. These changes have been implemented because North American queues and Europe queues were dead.
Yeah.
People couldn't get games in North America, like the two biggest regions. We obviously saw big problems with the queue in Australia quite early on. I think it was Australia... a few of the smaller European regions were having problems as well. There was like 4 or 5 different regions that were really struggling to get games going. Well, they'll struggling to get games going because they're getting put into the wrong queues, and that was a big issue. Eventually, they put in some sort of solution, but by then it was too late, and it was like a half-assed solution. It was one of those things where it would check for how many people were in queue, and if it didn't feel like there were enough, then it would just join you into a different region. But like nobody wants to play a fucking Battlefield first-person shooter with 150 to 200 ping.
No, it's unplayable beyond 150, I'd argue, and that's like partially to their credit because they've made such a well-honed netcode when it comes to like shooting, and it feels really good. below one. I mean, lower the better, but it feels really good below 150. But as soon as it goes over 150, to preserve that experience for lower latency players, the netcode actually stops, doing your aim assist or your lead assistance based on your latency, and you have to lead like old school Counter-Strike days. You have to aim ahead to take your latency into account. The challenge is that there's no easy way, simple or ugly, or easy, better looking way to have your latency on the screen that's not a giant fucking graph. So to be asked to look at your latency constantly to take it into account because it's varying a bunch as well.
Yeah.
Did they stop kicking you to other regions entirely?
No, because I jumped in on when they first put that change in. It was like between certain times.
Yeah.
If there's a low population, then we'll chuck you into a different region. I didn't agree with that change at all. I think if we would have had the changes that are in there now, like the spinning up servers, then at least people could have sat in that queue and then waited, or in that server and waited for it to fill up. Or if it didn't fill up, at least there'd be enough players in there to kick something off. Like 32 players is still enough. But I jumped in the other day when they put these latest fixes in there, and it was probably about, I don't know, maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and I queued, and the queue time was, I think it said 3 or 4 minutes, and I waited for maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes, nothing kicked on, and then eventually it kicked me into a 250 ping server. So it's like, it's not even spinning up Asian servers anymore, or Southeast Asia servers. It's just like done.
Yeah, I mean, like, if that patch comes out today, doesn't it? The new one?
Sure, but it doesn't make any, I don't think it's going to make any people come back to that game.
Well, what I hope does make people come back is if they actually properly push the idea that they've added new content. I found that with all of these older disastrous launches by DICE, including Star Wars Battlefront and whatnot, was that people would come back for content. They wouldn't come back for patches. So maybe if they've pushed that hard enough, people will be curious to jump in like tonight, tomorrow, over the weekend to check it out. And then if enough people are doing that, then people will come back to play. Because I'm like, when I had fun with that mode, I really enjoyed it. But
yeah, it's really good.
When you're sitting there for 10, 15, fucking 20 minutes trying to get a game going, and there's nothing that you can change to improve that. I mean, there is what we planned on doing was there was a gaming router that I got sent, a Netgear one, the high-end one, I want to say the XR700, top of my head, that lets you go into the settings and like actually region lock manually so that you can't find games outside of a particular region. You can make that as small or as big as you like. That would have been a kind of solution for the squad leader, but it would, by what you've just explained, depend on other people wanting to connect at the same time. Whereas what they do with the core game, and that, includes a 64-player server. If you want to go play a mode that nobody's playing in Battlefield 5, and you go create, matchmaking, right? They want you to actually use matchmaking and it will fire up a server for one person, and you could stay in there forever, and it will stay live even if nobody else joins. So it doesn't make sense to me why they're not worried about the cost of spinning up a server in that context, but for some fucking reason, even though the technology exists within their netcode, they don't want to do it for a battle royale. And I mean, you can keep people in that lobby, but like just connecting to a server knowing that the latency is low enough gives people the hope to hang around for at least a little bit longer. People will wait for a few minutes if they think a game's going to start. And with the 64-player servers, you'll see at peak times there'll be like 8 or 9 in Australia, and their queues will be up to like 5, 7 each. And if you create a new one,
people jump in.
Wait 5 minutes. Yeah, people start filling it up, and the more that people join, the more people go, I could jump into a 10-player match, and soon enough, it doesn't take long. The whole thing is full.
Yeah.
So I think that they've really made questionable choices. And I mean, I know Criterion designed it, but I always kind of assumed that DICE would have been in charge of kind of like the back end, you know what I mean? Like, here's how we do our multiplayer. So maybe that's not the case. Maybe something has been lost in communication. But unless they're going to do something at E3, like EA Play, and say,
they have to.
Free week, free weekend, or...
No, it's free to play. Like...
Just
pull that mode out of Battlefield, and it's free play now. That's the only way to save it.
That'd be a very clever way to pimp their game. Let people have the full download. They just can't access anything else, and maybe they're curious enough to want to do it. But yeah, like if they do that, like Apex Legends make your money on your cosmetic bullshit. That's a smart way to get it back up, because people will go and play it then. I mean, then you've got the problem of cheats, which is always the bad thing. Like the good thing about any barrier of entry for a game, even if it's a few bucks, is that there are going to be fewer cheaters because it costs them money. It costs them money to get new accounts, right?
Sure.
Whereas Apex Legends, I'm not sure what that's like these days with cheaters, but they get banned, they can start a new account immediately unless they're banning it like at a hardware level.
They're banning hardware.
That's good.
Like Mac IDs and hardware IDs.
See, that's really good. You got to buy a new computer. Now that'll make you think twice, won't it?
Yeah. There's obviously ways around it, but you've got to really dig into it to do that. So yeah, I think that's the only way they can sort of get around it is make it free to play. I think that game mode is done. Like if it is dead in North America and Europe, if they can't get games, then they've got to rethink what's going on. And I think the biggest problem was that the way it was set up initially to get people into the matches, that was the biggest hurdle.
Well, they just prioritize convenience, and they should never have done that. And I actually am glad to hear that it's dying in the bigger regions because they can't turn around and do what fucking PUBG Corporation did and go, oh, there's not enough players in your region, guys. Like, no, you made dud decisions so that there aren't enough players in the region because people don't want to fucking sit around in a queue. They want to play your goddamn game. Yeah. Doesn't matter how good it is. People don't wait.
This was when like PUBG was at its biggest. They were like, well, not its biggest, but it was way bigger than maybe the player base was 2.5 times bigger than what it was during early access.
Yeah,
we never had any problems in early access getting fucking games.
No,
and then eventually they put that April update in that killed the matchmaking, and they were like, oh, there's not enough people in your region. Like, no, there's plenty of people. There's just we're getting put into the wrong servers.
Yeah, there's not enough people playing because you broke something, and I think that's really bad. I mean, Australian market compared to the American market or Europe, if you count that as a whole, is always going to be proportionally smaller. But any time that failed to find us a game in Firestorm, I would just jump over to Conquest, and see that there were usually 8 to 10 full servers. So that's like hundreds of people, if not, 1,000, I guess, if people are waiting or playing different modes. Playing just on PC in Australia, that's enough to get a fucking server going. And
one server with 32 people or 64 or something.
But if you solo queued and left your squad open for squads in Firestorm, I found consistently, like, because I'd talk to them, I'd write like, "Hey, you guys from Australia?" Get on the microphone and go, "Hey, where you guys from?" And they're like, "Where do you think I'm from? Fuck it." And you're like, "Okay, he's an Aussie." So it was matching us locally correctly, but then somehow that wasn't leading to a game. I don't understand, man. Like, they broke something. I'm glad they didn't blame the player base. You don't have enough players. But yeah, they've got to do something drastic to fix it, man. And I think you're on to the right solution. Whether they'll do it or not is something else.
I feel like they've put too much time and money into it for them not to. Just to leave it dead.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I think it needs to happen. I don't like the fact that Call of Duty has a battle royale mode that is separate. Like, all these games have dozens and dozens of modes in them, and every time they add a new mode, they segregate the community. Because, like, this person wants to play team deathmatch or free for all, and then you've got 4 or 5 different modes in a battle royale mode, and it splits that up completely. It's just, I think it needs to be a separate game, and just do the free to play cosmetic thing that all the popular ones are doing, and you can make money off it. It's proven. So
I think that's what the best lesson that Battle Royale has taught developers and publishers, which a lot of them still haven't learned. Yeah, and thinking about DICE specifically, is that you can do well with one mode and one fucking map. People will keep coming back to play it as long as your gameplay loop is, interesting enough to make it feel different but the same, and you've got your tension and your releases and all that sort of stuff. It's important for a game to keep people coming back for more.
Yeah.
And you still got DICE, prioritizing the release of content in Battlefield 5 that people aren't playing. These smaller modes, and they're 3 maps, so they're clearly not well tested because they're easily exploitable. Thinking of Grind, did you end up playing Grind Conquest?
No, I don't think so.
It was like, on paper, it's fun, and when it plays properly, it's awesome. There's no vehicles, it's all infantry based, it's super hectic, super close, and you're fighting in a straight line over 3 points. Cool. And they've got flanking routes, which is great. And they've slightly tweaked some of the familiar maps. What they didn't test was there were certain maps where you could just fire a Piat or a grenade from spawn to spawn and get kills immediately. And that's what people would do the whole map. Thump, 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 and they were getting kills for it. I'm like, how did you not fix this? And you can fix it by just putting a big bloody wall or an invisible wall that explodes them to avoid it, or I don't know, change something. But so they half-ass these new modes, and then they have them out for 2 weeks, and then they kill them, and occasionally they come back. But it's like, why are you putting all your effort into that? This is not what people want. People want more maps, for starters, in Battlefield 5. People want more weapons. They want more factions, but they want more factions so they can get more weapons and vehicles, right? They want America so they can have American tanks and American guns. And yet, no, DICE is content to go, no, we know what we're doing. And it's like, to a certain extent, I'm all for you not being led by the community. But when it comes to this, and the community has been asking for the same thing since launch, and the numbers must be showing, I mean, at least in Australia, unless there's a challenge around a new mode, those new modes die very, very quickly. People blitz through them just to get their unlock, and then everyone goes back to Conquest. And they've finally learnt that they need to have multiple paths to get through to the unlocks because people don't want to, have objectives linked to, like, you don't want people to be thinking, I'm not enjoying this game, I'm just grinding, it's not an MMO. Reward them for the modes and the ways they want to play and give them options to do it, and you can go back and complete it if you want to be a completionist. So they're finally cluing onto that, but this has been a problem since, I don't know, last Battlefield before that maybe?
Sure.
They're very slow to learn.
Yeah. Anyway, we sidetracked.
Far be it from us.
Anything to say about Mordhau anymore?
No, get it. Play it. It's good. Yeah, it's good fun.
Nice. Rage 2. You've been playing some Rage 2. I played some Rage 2. I talked about it already. I got a feeling that your opinion's going to be pretty similar to mine. Or ours?
Yeah, probably. I finished it, and it's amazing because I think you and Job had warned me about this abrupt ending, and I was ready for it, but I clearly wasn't ready for just how abrupt. It's like, game over, motherfucker, get out. And you're like, okay. And then I went, like, I didn't really care about the story.
No.
Story was, I found myself like running through towns looking for text bubbles above people's head, activating them, and then hitting F to skip immediately just to get the pop-up on the map.
Right.
Sorry, writers of Rage 2. Like, that story was just so, like, afterthought and lackluster.
Job and I talked about this, the best fucking story parts were in the DLC, the pre-order bonus.
Yeah.
The pre-order bonus mission.
Yes.
That's nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. And the driving, man, I loved the vehicular combat in Mad Max, and I was saving it in this game. I'm like, I'm going to upgrade my vehicles so it's fun. I've got all these options, and it is so fucking boring. I'm like, what? Why? How did they go so wrong? Like, going from Mad Max to this. So I don't even care about that anymore. But, man, the shooting, holy shit. I think it's better than Doom. So it is going to have to step up. Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there. People saying that it designed the shooting and Avalanche did the open world. I did an interview with Avalanche just before the game came out. I was under a similar impression, and I asked them about, like, who touched what, who did what. And they were like, dude, we made everything. And it was like a producer role. And they said the first thing we had to make was the shotgun, because Tim Willits, head of id Software, great guy, he said, you got to make a shotgun. If the shotgun doesn't feel good, the whole game falls apart. And we know that id makes amazing shotguns. I think Rage 2 shotgun is probably the best shotgun I've ever used in a game. Like, it's awesome. And the fact that you can go from shotgun mode to kind of like slug rail mode, but it's not full railgun, it's not unlimited distance. It's such a satisfying gun, and I ended up using that in the assault rifle. No matter how much I tried to convince myself to use the other guns, I saved my rockets for the bosses.
Right.
Did you play on hard?
I played on normal. I felt like we probably should have bumped the difficulty on, because I didn't die at all. The only times I died was when Job and I were testing some stuff out.
Yeah, it's not hard
easy.
on hard. Like, when you get swarmed, yeah, which is cool because the moment-to-moment gunplay is cool, but you end up leveling up to a point where it doesn't really matter. The boss fights were the most disappointing, even on hard, dude. Seriously, without even popping your extra damage special, whatever it was, V. Rocket launcher, like, and I had my rocket launcher upgraded to hold 6 in the mag, and outside of that one that you had to you shoot in the face and then it would fall over and then you go shoot the blue shit on its back. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Which became the easiest boss but the most annoying.
Yeah, I mean that seemed to be when you talk about bosses, that's the only one I can really remember from the game, because that was like so easy. You'd shoot him in the stomach, he'd fall over, and by the time you killed the thing on the back and you started getting up again, you could be back out the front shooting that spot, and like you basically stun lock him.
Yeah, well, what I thought it was the chest as well, and then I discovered you could also do it with the head. So what I ended up doing was like it would be flick, or sorry, rocket to the head, and then dash, or when you unlock the mega sprint over behind, sure, unload your assault rifle, and then between animations when he's getting back up, dash to the front, rocket to the face, dash back, unload, and it was just, and then when he loses his armor, just back off and use anything. Like, it just didn't matter at that stage. There were the other similar sized, like the big mutants. You could find them out in world. You'd find their nests. I had to fight two at once, which was cool, because the second one like surprised me, because it was out of my vision, and when I was smashing the other one, he came out of nowhere. That was cool, but seriously, just like 5 rockets and they're dead. And then even when you challenge yourself to just use the assault rifle or something, it's not satisfying. But the gunplay in the camps against the regular grunts, and I just found it amazing, and that's what kept me coming back. And I get these urges to go and do completionist stuff, go and find all of the crates. I didn't care about the data pads because the story, but find all the crates. And then I didn't need money anymore. I didn't want to upgrade anything anymore.
Yeah.
So it really was just about the gunplay. And for me, that feels so reminiscent of the problems of the original Rage. Like, the original Rage had good gunplay. Like, when it got you into the corridor shooting sections, the gunplay was cool. It felt good. Sure. The AI wasn't too bright. AI is better in Rage 2, but they're mostly there for your entertainment and to play with. Like, it's Bulletstorm 2.0, right?
I thought the AI was decent in Rage. They were doing cool things with, like jumping off ceilings and grabbing parts of the wall, and like sort of. I felt like the AI was toned down more.
Really?
I was expecting more from the AI in this game, because when I talked to them in June last year or May, that was something I brought up, being like, "Hey, you guys did some pretty interesting things with the AI in the original game." It was like, I felt like one of the most standout parts of it. Like, are you looking at what they did and sort of trying to do something similar? And they're like, "Yeah, that was a big focus for us," type stuff. And then when I eventually played it, I'm like, "Nah, like I'm not seeing anything here that is reminiscent of what they did." It's just pretty generic, like run at you sort of stuff. Occasionally they'd hide behind cover and that sort of thing, but in the first Rage, I remember them interacting with the environment a lot more.
Right, I just remember the terrible action roll that they used to do that would lock them in an animation that was so slow that you would just track them and wait for them to stop, or you just blow them away while they were doing it, knowing you could get free hits on them. This is the original Rage. In this one, I noticed that they flanked a bunch more, that if you stopped for too long, it's like they wanted to do that push forward combat from Doom. If you stopped for too long, they would not just hit a grenade at you, they'd hit like 3 or 4 grenades at you. The rockets would be coming in. So I found that you really had to keep moving.
Sure.
And the more that you move, the more that they would get around behind you, and you kill them. I actually wish they didn't have kill indicators on the crosshairs, because you'd knock them on their ass sometimes, and you go past them and they'd be crawling away from you shooting and stuff. I thought that was that was cool. I don't think it's like revolutionary, AI. I'm not going to die on that hill, but I certainly found a sense of satisfaction that kind of moved them beyond the demons of Doom that really felt like they were there just to be shot. These ones at least seem to kind of try to survive sometimes, but man, by the end, you're so fucking overpowered in the end if you invest your upgrades correctly. And it's part of the satisfaction, though, is that power fantasy. But I just can't help but feel that my biggest problems with Rage were that the open world felt like it was tacked on and the story was forgettable. My biggest problems with Rage 2 is that the open world feels tacked on, the story's forgettable. And then the disappointment of what Avalanche has done before with vehicular combat, and it being just, again, such an afterthought. It feels like they spent so much time focusing on the shooting and the power interaction. That shield ability, by the way, is dumb. Like, that has no place in that game, because every other power seems to want to push you forward. So the fact that it feels like...
The barrier?
Yeah, the barrier.
I never got it.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, that was the one ability I didn't find.
Well, that's good. So for me, having done the interview and also chatted to you guys, like when I interviewed the dudes, they said that they had hidden all of the weapons and the abilities off the main path, and I thought that was kind of stupid, right? Like, because you could technically play through Rage and you might get a few of the main weapons, but if you don't go arc hunting and they're not part of the main story, you're going to not get to experience some of the fun. Like even though I use the shotgun and the assault rifle the most, I like the dart gun. You know, you fire them off into the distance, and I like the click revolver.
The fire.
Underpowered,
fire
but once you upgraded it, it actually became kind of like, and it was fun just to play with them.
It's fun to use, yeah.
Yeah, so those guns were like cool and kind of semi-unique, and the powers as well, the way you'd string the powers together. But I deliberately, after playing the first few hours, just went arc hunting. You know, found every single one, and then went and played the game, because why would I want to play without? But that shield, man, I remember seeing I think it was like something like 100 or 200 quickfire questions from Game Informer to Tim Willits, if I remember correctly. And one of the early questions was, which ability is the weakest? And he just goes, barrier. It's like, no question, no like trying to spin it like, oh, they're all the great. He's just like, barrier. So that felt like such a like, oh, we've got to put this final ability in, or we've got to cater to those players that want to hang back. But that game, like, they don't do that in fucking Doom because they don't want you to hang back.
Yeah. I did see that interview, because that was the one where Tim Willits revealed that you could play as a female.
Right.
And that was after they asked him a question, but not related to that. And then he said, why don't you ask me if you can play as a female? And then they said, oh, can you play as a female? I said, yes, you can. I'm like, I've been asking that question like 3 times and no one would answer it.
Oh, they wouldn't answer it. They kept it secret.
No, I asked them back when at the very first reveal of that game, if they were going to have like a gender choice, because Walker was voiced. And then the second time I asked them that was at the QuakeCon event that you and I did.
Yeah.
And they showed the trailer, and they kept referring to Walker as like
Shepard
Walker, as opposed to like he he comes from this background or whatever. Like, they never said he. They always said Walker, or like they. I think they said maybe they. And I like asked them. I asked Magnus again, straight up, during our interview, being like, you might have been in the room. I can't remember. Being like, hey, like, I explained this whole thing about the trailer, and like how last time I asked and they wouldn't answer it, and he was like, we're not talking about that right now.
Isn't that weird?
Like, that's the only question I had, so fair enough.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I don't know why maybe they hadn't finalized at that stage, but it seems like a super weird, you know, tidbit, no pun intended, to hang on to so late in the kind of the marketing drive for the game.
Yeah, but I wrote an article about how, like, I have a feeling you're going to be able to play as a female in this game, and here's my proof. Here are the 2 times I've asked them about stuff, and they won't answer my question. So,
yeah, I
was on it.
Yeah, you.
Yeah. Anyway, I agree with you. I think it's a solid 7 out of 10. The game 6.57.
Yeah,
it's good. Don't come at me and be like, you said it's fucking terrible. No, on my scale, 7 is a good game. So yeah, I think shooting's outstanding. Shooting's amazing. It's just the rest of the stuff that's around the game: the driving, the exploration, the content, the repetitive nature of it.
Lots of missed opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I think. Did you do any of the meteors?
Yeah, I did a bunch of
And you got to fucking stand there and look at each.
Hold E.
I'm like, who designed this? But like, it's not just hold E to harvest entire meteor. You've got to like actively engage with it to complete it. And I'm like, this is not fun. Nobody's having fun doing this. There's
like 10 to 15 different little shards on this meteor that you got to click E on or hold E on.
Yeah, and then you figured out that you can just hold it and move your aim. But I'm like, this is still a chore. And as far as, you know, ticking off boxes, because I like doing that. Like, if it's close enough to where I want to go, I'll be like, oh yeah, it'll take me 2 minutes, I'll go do that. And then I'd find myself going, I fucking hate these things. Like, why am I even doing this anymore?
Yeah, for a fast-paced game, they really grind it to a halt at that specific part of it. And the driving, the convoy stuff, I did 1 or 2 of them, and I was like, I'm good. I don't need to do this stuff anymore.
They're all the same. They're like,
yeah.
I mean, I haven't done all of them. That's not fair. I've done 3 or 4, and they all played out exactly the same. I ended up using the flying thing, Icarus, because that would just get me to places so much
much quicker.
faster. And it didn't have any armaments or upgrades or anything. So I was like, fair enough. I'm just gonna fly straight to where I want to go, do my looting, and fly off again, or do my killing. And I ended up playing another 30, 60 minutes of endgame stuff, or endgame just ticking off shit from the open world. And I find now that I'm just like exploring question marks just to see if there's a fight there, and if there's not, I'm just like rolling on, because the fighting is so fucking good, but everything else is so just like by the numbers. And yeah, it doesn't match the awesomeness of how goddamn good the shooting is. And if you're a fan of shooting, like, you got to get it, like probably get it when it's on special. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't see how they can patch fix the other stuff. Like, it's like a design, right? Design level issues. It's not super buggy. I didn't have a super buggy experience. I had a somewhat buggy, with the audio. Did you get the audio bugs?
That it was cutting out, yeah.
Like, where they'd be responding to you, but you hadn't said anything,
Couldn't hear anything.
or their dialogue would drop out. Yeah, like some of that persists, but
I mean, for me, we were playing it early as well. It could have been something they fixed. I'm not sure if they fixed it yet, but it wasn't a huge deal because I usually play with subtitles on anyway.
Right.
And like, it was story content, so I was like not invested in it at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously it's an issue to note down.
But like, it's not one of those, like Days Gone leading up to its release was, I wouldn't say unplayable, but it had some serious bugs. I know for Rage 2, Job said he had crashes. I didn't have any crashes.
He said he crashed like 11 times, I think. I think I had one crash, and that was when I was playing with him.
Yeah. I had one instance the other night where I encountered a bug where I had to restart the game. Like,
right.
I think I survived something I wasn't supposed to, so the game registered me as dead. So I couldn't actually fire my weapons or aim my weapons anymore. Bit of a problem. So I exited, loaded up a save, and it was fine. Like, it didn't carry over. But apart from that, it was mostly just minor stuff. Physics fails, which are fucking hilarious anyway. I love. And occasionally the AI would just kind of be standing there. Even though you just slaughtered 3 people behind them, they'd just be looking out a door. And you're like, okay, weird. But I'm here to play with my food anyway, so I don't mind.
Yeah. I don't know if it's something we talked about on here at least, but Job and I mentioned it when we were first playing Rage, how our name tags were popping up in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and this is before release, and at that time we had an email saying that, like, there's things coming up, like, once launch starts, like events and things like that. And so we spent a bit of time trying to figure out what these name tags were. Like, initially we thought maybe they're like Dark Souls, where you could find where people died and then avenge them, because there was a friends avenged stat in the game. And so we were toying around with that a bit, like making ourselves die in the game and sort of playing in the same area. We couldn't figure it out. And when the game launched, eventually I put a thing up on Twitter saying, we've found this thing, but we can't figure out like what it does. And Bethesda eventually got back to us. They saw the message, and apparently people's name tags will pop up when they are nearby, when they've found an arc nearby. So you'll see a game tag in your world from a friend that's found an arc, and if you look closely, you'll be able to see footprints on the ground, which will lead you to an arc. That's a cool idea. I think the execution, the way they've sort of done it, is a bit strange, because they don't really explain that to you at all. Like, it's just a floating name tag in the air, and that's why we spent an hour and a half trying to figure it out. But like, stuff like that's interesting, at least.
It would have been like a much better mechanic if you couldn't just hold down focus and see the giant colored pylons in the sky that show where an arc is.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that they
chest.
Oh, right.
Like that.
I appreciate that they gave me that option, because I wanted to go and find that stuff immediately, because I had played 3 hours of preview and felt like underwhelmed at that stage, because I was just using basic arsenal items, pistol, shotgun, assault rifle. And I'd seen the trailers which showed off these different weapons and these different abilities. I'm like, I want to play that game, man. I want to play with those powers and those guns. So that's, yeah, when I think you guys told me they're all in the arcs, I'm like, okay, I'm going arc hunting then.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, enjoyable game. Just a couple small issues. I'm interested to see if they make a third one.
Yeah, well, it depends if it sells well enough, right? Like, it's another one of those perfect opportunities where they've got something that really gels with people and is genuinely amazing. And it depends if it sells well enough for them to be able to come back a third time and go, you know what, we are hearing the problems loud and clear, and so
We fix the driving.
because everyone will be asking, have you fixed the driving? Have you fixed the open world? How's the story better? You know.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I hope they do. I hope it sells well enough for them to take that foundation and get a third shot, or a second shot at redemption, I guess, or a second shot at better executing the idea and actually building out the fact. Like it feels almost like it didn't have to be an open world game. You know, like they would have been
Sure.
better with hubs, like larger sprawling level hubs, and
Yep.
just that shooting and the powers.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think it would have been better without the driving. I would have been happy just to run around.
Yeah, and by the end, you get so fast that, yeah, driving is it's very boring. It's very slow.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's move on. To I've played a bunch of Marvel's Spider-Man, the DLC.
Oh, okay.
I never actually got around to it. It was in my top 5 last year. I think it was number 3. Marvel Spider-Man, and I just never really got around to playing the DLC. It's called The City That Never Sleeps, and it is basically a 3-part like story add-on for the end of the game. So you probably shouldn't play it if you haven't played the whole game, because it does reveal story beats, things that happen after, and they're decent chunks of gameplay. There's probably about 3 to 4 hours per DLC in terms of the actual main story, and then on top of that, you've got a bunch of extra side content that it gives you. Things like new side missions, new collectibles to go and look for. So it's not just like this small contained extra bit of content to do. It's like a whole extra like 8 hours worth of experience on there, and that's for each one. There's 3 of them all up, and they released them a month after like the game sort of came out. They went like, all right, we'll do one in October, one in November, one in December. So it was pretty good in terms of like keeping people engaged in that world. And I think that it's an interesting way of doing it, because although it's not like pivotal to the main story, it's kind of like a side thing. Like, hey, here's some cool extra bits in the world that we can kind of tell with these familiar characters, because they go in there with things like Black Cat, and you get a massive story arc to like Yuri Watanabe, who is the police, you're sort of like your police friend during the game.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge arc that she goes through that's in this content. You interact with Hammerhead. I guess the story is that Black Cat is finding all these USB keys, and that's got a bunch of information on there, which is Hammerhead is involved with. And across the 3 stories, this arc sort of plays out, and all these other characters are introduced. And in terms of how it comes along, I think it's really cool. It's got some, each one kind of ends on a cliffhanger to kind of get you invested in like what's to come. They obviously throw in all this different types of backstory in there with other characters by giving you collectibles or extra side missions to go on to, which is really cool. And so yeah, I played like another 15 hours of Spider-Man over the week, because I was actually going to play the whole thing again.
Whoa.
And then because I was just looking for games to play, man. I was tossing up between that and God of War, because I watched the God of War documentary recently, and
How was it?
God of War documentary is amazing. Yeah, everybody should go watch it. Yeah, it's outstanding.
Nice.
So yeah, I was kind of tossing up between Spider-Man and God of War, and God of War is obviously a longer game, so I was like, I'll just jump into Spider-Man, and maybe I'll just mainline the story again. And then I realized that I hadn't played the DLC, so I started a New Game Plus, and then eventually just jumped into the DLC and started playing that. Sat there, played like 2 sessions pretty much, and just it was really good. There's a lot of awesome interactions with like Miles. Like, you see the events after Spider-Man and sort of what transpires from there, like him interacting with him a lot more, which is really cool, and sort of what happens with the Miles character, and then I guess where they're going to go with the next game, because obviously they're going to make a sequel to this. And then just they add a couple of different types of game mode or game mechanics in there, which are cool. So overall, I think it's if you enjoyed Marvel's Spider-Man, it was one of your favorite games last year, I think, and you haven't played the DLC, it's definitely one to check out. It's not going to like blow you away in terms of what that game did. It's just sort of like more of that universe and more of building up what you can sort of get out of it. So I really dug it, and I thought that what they did was interesting, especially with the character building. Like, there's a lot of character stuff going on in this DLC, which how that will sort of play out in the sequel is really exciting to see.
Do you not have any games in your guilt pile?
Yes. So after I finished Spider-Man, and it's not on the list because I'm not going to talk about it, I fired up Persona 5 because although I played about 20 hours of that game, I really enjoyed it, and I want to go back and try and finish it. So I've started from the start again, and because that's from what I understand, that's like an 80-hour to 90-hour game, and since there's nothing going on right now, I'm like, why not play a giant Japanese RPG?
Isn't Red Dead Online launching later this month, like out of beta?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's not the past. I'm keen to try that again, but like
sure.
I tried an hour, I think, and it was just an hour of kind of opening and tutorials, and it felt very reminiscent of the opening of Red Dead, which I didn't particularly not that I didn't enjoy it, it's just that I wouldn't want to play it again.
Sure.
Because the real game comes after that.
Yeah.
I'm
sure I'll get back in there.
Yeah, it's worth a crack, and if they're willing to remove the beta tag, I'm more interested in trying it then rather than early when people are talking about there's not all the content that they want is there and stuff like that. Yeah. So we'll see. But I'm always of the opinion there's too many games to play, man. My guilt list is insane. I only finished Wolfenstein 2 recently, which I feel bad that it's taken me that long to do. But yeah, I've got so many games installed on the different platforms, and it's usually a case of having some spare time and going, what do I feel like? Do I feel like multiplayer? Nah, fuck that. Okay, I want to play something single player, and then going through like 5 or 10 options and going, which one do I feel like the most? Or loading it up like I did with Tomb Raider recently, because I'm so close to the end in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I just want to finish it and uninstall it. Didn't really enjoy it, but I was like invested enough hours that I feel that I should put a full stop on it. And the fucking sound wasn't working. Like the dialogue wasn't working at all. I'm like, why?
Get your sound right. It's not that hard.
Get your sound right. Like, how many patches have come out since? I've got like all the DLCs there, but I don't really want to touch it because it all looks like just that kind of basic tacked on shit that you expect. Like the opposite of what you talked about with the Spider-Man content. That's the DLC that you're used to. Just like, there's a challenge room for 20 minutes. You're like, okay, cool. Like, why would I care about that?
Yeah. How about we keep the Sony bandwagon going and talk about Days Gone?
Yeah, I'm sure that I don't want to stay on it for too long. Just that I'm sure you guys talked about it a lot. It was a game that is probably like a 6 out of 10 for me, but one that I kept coming back to before it came out. And I kept playing, and I kept wanting to clear areas. I actually really enjoyed the gameplay loop. It's interesting to hear the bigger problems that people have. Like, people talked a lot about bugs in the lead up to release, and not everyone got to experience the worst of the bugs. The bigger problems with the game weren't bugs. They were, they were design decisions, and the storytelling was all over the place in terms of like its quality, and even like in terms of its like it felt like there was plot holes because the certain characters, you'd play certain mission first, and then later on they were having a moment, and you're like, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you referencing that? Like, that guy's a fuckwit. He just fucked you over with this, and you don't want to bring that up in this moment? Like, that seems off.
Yeah.
And it felt a bit all over the place. But like, I like the shooting. A lot of people said they didn't like the shooting. I didn't like the shooting. Yeah, I liked it. I thought that...
I felt like it was too bullet spongy.
Yeah, I didn't like the earlier guns because they had like levels and stuff. Like the earlier guns were terrible. And I didn't do much shooting then. I was doing a lot of melee combat. But when you started to get to level 3 guns, I think like 1, 2, 3, I think was the basic, and they had ones beyond that. They would start one-shotting headshots if you had the right guns. Like and shotguns felt like shotguns at that stage. The earlier shotguns didn't really feel like shotties. They could have done so much more with the noise mechanic, man. Holy shit. It just felt like you could make noise as much as you wanted within a certain area, and they wouldn't care. Like, if you were worried that a gunshot was going to bring in shitloads from all around, and you had to leave, like, early on without the right weapons, without the right, explosives and stuff like that, I think they've had a missed opportunity there. That there is a survival game at the heart of that game that they didn't tap into properly. Reminds me a lot of Mad Max, which I know was divisive. A lot of people were like, yeah, it was okay or whatever. I thought it was okay. I finished it, though. I put 40 hours into it. I clearly enjoyed it enough to finish it. But I always sort of felt, I wish that they've done DLC or someone released a mod, like a survival mod where water actually was a requirement, like not just for health, like it actually, you had to go back and get it, kind of like the forest survival sense, where the vehicle combat was made like bolstered by the fact that you might, to replace a damaged part on your car, you needed to get that part off the other car, but if you shot at it too much, you'd destroy it. Like, just really pushing the survival element.
I don't think it went far enough.
No, because it felt kind of like light, and it's the same with Days Gone. Like, I got to a stage pretty quickly where I felt like I was never running out of ammunition. That only when I'd go up to an ammo crate and it would be like, you're full, that I would then go, oh, I better shoot off some rounds just so I can like pick up ammo later because everything's full. So yeah, the survival element wasn't particularly well executed, and also when you actually go up against those giant swarms, it's fucking intense, and there wasn't enough of that. And that's what I mean. Like, if they just made the sound carry a greater distance or something like that, because there were really awesome times when I'd stealth a camp, and I remember this one instance. We played it in preview, and I replayed it in review, and I'm like, oh, I know this. Like, I already know this section. This is a piece of piss. It was hilariously where I'd stepped on every bear trap that you could step on, and Job was just like laughing.
They're hard to see.
But like, he was like, I'm like, oh, there's a bear trap, and then I'd step in it anyway. And he's like, you saw it though. How did you do that? So I was like, I know where all the bear traps are, and I diffused them all, and I relayed them. I felt like a badass. Like, if people were going to escape, I stealthed through most of the dudes there, and then there was one or two that I hadn't spotted, and they saw me, and they fired a shot, and I'm like, this is fine. I'd planned on this anyway. I've got my fallback plan, I've got my guns. But that shot called a nearby horde, and there's only one way in or out of that place on the bridge, and they swarmed in, and it was just like, fuck! So I had to kite them up and around to create an opening to get back out of the one way in, and then run them over the bear traps, and like firing off everything, throwing everything. I'm like, holy fuck, if this game had more of that, like if you were scared, like a gunshot made you terrified because you're like, oh fuck, and it didn't matter that you hadn't fired it. So missed opportunities, man. Like, that game, I don't think it was ever going to have the polish that we've come to expect from AAA Sony. I mean, that run of like God of War, Spider-Man. And I mean, going back a bit more, but like The Last of Us, which when it got its HD or its PS4 version, scaled really well, and it was another reason to go back and enjoy that game again. And then you got this game, which was like fine, and I think that a lot of the bigger problems with it are really that, if I'm being honest, are just that it wasn't that level of polish. Like, it was a perfectly fine game if it wasn't like AAA Sony's pedigree. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, can you imagine if Rockstar released something like that, which feels like they've just kind of rushed it out for, like, it's been delayed before, we've got to get it out, we need a game in this window. Rockstar would never do that. I mean, they don't have to, but I don't think Sony's in a position where they have to do that either. Like, they won this console generation so long ago, they don't even need to release first-party games at the moment, because they've got the install base to be supported by third-party. They can be fully focused on next-gen and making sure they hit the ground running and winning that battle, which I think they should be worried, because Microsoft has learnt, and it has, hired appropriately. I think the guy who's in charge of Xbox at the moment is far and away better than that guy who was talking about fucking TV, the launch of Xbox One. Like, he gets it that it's games, and they're not really competing anymore this generation, and that's why last year at E3, when they're announcing that they've got studio acquisition after studio acquisition, they've said And for me, that was like, well, they're not saying expect more games on the Xbox One, although I'm sure there'll be that crossover period where they're available on that and whatever the next one is. They're saying we are, firing a shot across the bow of Sony, saying we're coming for you next gen. Like, we're making games now that you won't see for 3 years, but they're going to be launch titles or whatever for the 2020 Xbox, which I'm pretty sure is going to be announced officially at E3, right? Be dumb if it's
I feel
not.
like it would be before. I thought it was going to be before, but we're what, 2 weeks away, so maybe it's not before.
Well, they don't. Like, Sony doesn't have a presence there. Like, this is the perfect opportunity for them to go, we got this,
Yeah, but at the same time, it seems like publishers, console publishers have gotten away from the whole, we're not going to spend an hour talking about our new console, we're going to spend an hour showing you the new games in the console. Instead, we're going to do a console reveal earlier on, before, like,
Right.
a couple weeks before, and be like, you'll be able to see more at E3 when we talk about the games. Considering we haven't heard anything, I haven't heard shit about what... I've heard murmurs about what Xbox is doing, but I'm pretty surprised that we haven't heard about a console yet.
Well, they still might do it, but I think the other way to do it is to meet it halfway and go, here's our new console, here's a real quick video of its features, like that 1 minute of numbers of shit and
Sure.
it opening up and you having a look at the stuff that doesn't mean anything to anybody, and then going, and here's some games, right? Like, it's absolutely the best way to do it, is to show people games and not to do what was it, that Wired article did with the PS5,
Yeah.
which was to talk about an older game and then kind of talk about, like, my biggest takeaway from that was that it's going to have an SSD. And I think that's awesome. That's exciting.
You saw the video that came out that they talked about in that article?
No, I didn't.
There was a leaked video
okay.
during it was like an internal Sony meeting.
Leaked.
Where they were, well, it was from like somebody's phone of them, like, basically showing, like, hey, here's that clip of, like, Spider-Man loading on the PlayStation 4, and here it is loading on our next-gen hardware, and it's like, it loads in 0.83 seconds, and then it loads in, like, 8-point-something seconds on the PlayStation 4. Like, that was the leaked footage they were showing you. The other bit was the part they mentioned in that article where, like, the streaming of assets in the game, of Spider-Man, like, swinging down the city, they had to sort of restrict that in terms of how fast you could go, because at a certain point the game wouldn't be able to load in stuff in front of you quick enough.
Hard drive limitation again, right?
Sure.
Speed.
And so then you'd cut to the next gen platform, and it's just like, it just takes off, and you can see things loading in smoothly compared to the PlayStation 1, where it shows you, and it's just like stuff is sort of freezing up and then loading in and then freezing up. So yeah, that was the video that was leaked that was sort of referenced back to that article. I mean, like you said, I think the SSD is probably the biggest takeaway, because we're going to be able to see some really interesting things from games, be able to take advantage of whatever they're doing with that SSD, this custom hardware. And the rest of it is kind of just like bonus.
But
all right, yeah, cool.
But, like, I would be pissed if the next generation of consoles doesn't have an SSD. I was already put off that this generation and its refreshers didn't have an SSD as standard. Like, it's just, this is not newfangled fucking technology, guys, as PC gamers. Like, this is the reason why when I started playing Skyrim many moons ago, I reviewed it for Game Informer on Xbox 360. So I had a save file from Xbox 360. So I felt obliged to, because I'd played however many dozens of hours, I didn't want to lose all that. So I kept playing on Xbox 360, and I rage quit in the end because the load times were like 20 seconds, 30 seconds sometimes. I ended up restarting that thing I didn't want to do on my PC. I reinstalled it on an SSD, and I downloaded all these mods to make it look amazing, and my load time was like a second. So that allowed me to not be sitting there thinking about the game that I want to play while I'm in a fucking menu, or do I go into this cave because I know going into the cave means a loading screen. I don't want to wait 30 seconds. I probably don't need to go in there, versus like, it's a second. I'm not even going to think about that. Fuck, I'm in. And it makes such a big difference to enjoyment. And it makes me wonder about, like, games, whether games will now have to remove, like, the shitty little tips from loading screens because loading screens aren't going to be around anymore, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. I think that's awesome. Like, let's get consoles up to speed with PC in an area that really matters. Like, less time in a menu means more time playing your game, or in a loading screen, I should say. So yeah, if you had to load your game however many times in an hour and it takes
Sure.
20, 30 seconds, like like Days Gone, man. That game takes what, a minute or two to load, and then you hit continue, and then it takes another minute or two to load, and you're like,
Yeah,
why?
Red Dead did the same thing, right? Where that initial load was really loading in all the assets, and then you wouldn't get really any load screens after that.
But there are different, like, I'm struggling to think of an example, but I'm remembering better examples of open world games where that initial load is so long because when you hit continue, it's in your game, and it's like, whoop, there you go, you're playing now. And I'm like, that's such a much better way to do it than making me go, oh, I'll load it up the game Days Gone, and then I'll go get a drink or have a piss, and then I'll come back and I'll hit continue, and then I'll go do the other thing. Like, I would literally plan to do things around that because I'm like, I don't want to sit here staring at this loading shit. And then if it crashed or fucked up, you have to start again. You're like, oh, this goes another fucking 2 minutes of my life, which doesn't sound like it's like total first world problem, but it's also just like, yeah, that's less time playing your game, and with so many games out there, it's more reason for people to go, I'm going to go play something else that loads faster.
Right.
So that sounds like a dumb thing, but
I mean, developers have found ways to hidden a lot of that stuff. We talk about like the elevators, the very first iteration of that sort of thing, where everything had elevators now, and then you got to the point where it was people crawling through gaps in walls, like
forced walking sections in Gears of War. Remember this, everyone? Yeah.
Yeah. There's like, I mean, developers have gotten really smart about it. Obviously, we may see that sort of change with SSDs coming into play on consoles, but I watched a GDC video about Spider-Man talking about that again. But you played Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
You know, the opening of that game, it sort of starts you off with teaching you how to swing, and then you fight a couple of dudes, and then you end up out the front of Fisk Tower, and there's a point where you're fighting guys, and then the game sort of takes over, and you end up smashing through a window and then going into the tower.
Yeah.
And it's all one seamless thing. This video basically explains like how they did that. That like the way the camera is focused on certain elements within those cutscenes is because they're unloading things behind you and loading all the assets from this building so that you can seamlessly go into it. And like, so basically what you're seeing is a camera focused on these different things that are going on. So you never see any of that stuff happening, like the stuff that's disappearing. And then in this video that they're showing is like, hey, here's what it actually looks like when the camera's back out here. And you can see everything, like the buildings disappearing and the people disappearing, and then other things loading in front of you in the building.
Yeah.
Like really smart ways of hiding loading that's going on in the game. So like they've gotten to the point where they're that good at like being able to like not even let the player know that this stuff is happening in the background. So that is really interesting to see. But I think with SSDs we might see less of that sort of stuff because it may not be as big an issue.
And without having to worry about system resources, right? Like the realities of multi-platform gaming, especially as someone who prefers to play most things on PC, is that I understand that PC is still not very much lead platform, except when you get to like the stage that we're at right now, end of the console cycle, suddenly PC becomes this thing again because it makes everything look so shit hot. Or they're like, well, this is an idea of what it might look like on the next generation. This is the only time that we start getting lead platform again, predominantly, because everyone's thinking about the future. And what happens is that you get limited by the hardware constraints on a console limits design, because you talk to these developers and they talk about, you know, the art team fighting with the animation team, fighting with the gameplay team about the limited RAM, for instance, on an Xbox One or a PS4, and they're like, no, we need this amount of resources to make it look this good, but we want to add this gameplay feature that'll take up that, and it's fucking crazy, man. And on PC, it's like, well, technically you're not limited by anything, but the reality is that not everyone has a super high-end PC. I guess the better thing about PC gaming in the last, I don't know, decade is that you can pretty much get away with GPU upgrades, as you know, and still have your games running on like full settings and stuff like that, which I think is great because it's kind of like yeah, there's diminishing returns these days on faster hardware, and we haven't had that massive leap. It's all happened in the GPU space, and not so much in the CPU, RAM, whatever. I mean, SSDs went to M2, and then like the PCI Express ones have been around for the longest time. So it's sort of more making what we already have faster, but I don't think we've seen, the equivalent of what we've seen with like RTX, or even the big leap between that led to the 9 series. No, the 10 series, sorry, between 9 and 10 series on NVIDIA. We haven't seen that happen in CPUs, in my opinion. Probably wrong on that. Right in if I am. And still, CPUs, like DX12, the big promise of DX12 was that it was going to use a lot more CPU, so shared resources, so that it was going to take demand off GPU, which allowed for better looking games, better streaming games, because it was better usage of the hardware, more efficient usage of the hardware. But that hasn't really happened. CPU, if you bring up your task manager when you're playing games, particularly if you've got a newer CPU, you notice that it's comparatively, like, your GPU is probably maxed out. Your RAM might even be getting close to maxed out, depending on how big the game is. But your CPU is probably, I don't know, 30%. Yeah, maybe. And you're like, that's a lot of resources not being used.
Yeah.
And not that you necessarily want it to be getting close to 100 or whatever, but I mean, I'm looking at it now, I've got an LED on my CPU that measures the temperature. It's currently at 32 degrees. We're doing a Skype call, whatever. I don't really ever see that get above 50. So, like, this thing is not really, I mean, I've got a good cooler on it, but yeah, my computer's not being pushed the way that I want it to be pushed. And I find that whenever I go research, like for my next computer, what I'll end up doing is probably just getting a new GPU, right? Like, I'm like, okay, CPU, no, don't need more RAM. I've got 32 gigabytes. CPU's 6-core, like i7. I deliberately save up for a long time to go high end so that I don't have to upgrade. Right. And like you, for my last PC, I think I had it for 6 or 7 years and just threw new GPU in it. And it's still
good.
A buddy of mine has it, and I think he's still playing on medium or high settings for most new games. And my current computer's like, what, a year and a half, maybe 2 years old, getting close to 2 years, and it kicks ass still. I mean, it doesn't have a 20 series, but 1080 Ti, doesn't really need another GPU.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that was Days Gone.
And days have gone since we started talking about it.
Yeah. Might keep this Sony wagon going. I checked out Blood and Truth.
The VR game.
Last week, I think. Yeah, it's a PlayStation VR exclusive. This is made by Sony Interactive Entertainment London. They've worked on like a bunch of SingStar titles. They worked on Wonder Book. Do you remember that a couple of years back?
I do remember never
it's like
playing
a kids
that
game.
I think I got sent it and I never played it. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then after that, they worked on another like a PlayStation VR Worlds, which had sort of like a collection of games on there. I guess the one that probably stands out that most people has probably seen, like you and I, is the London Heist stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is sort of like an extension off of that. So they seem to be pretty involved in working with games that have peripherals.
It's the shtick.
Yeah. I don't have a PlayStation VR. I don't have a Vive. I don't have any of those VR peripherals. The only experience that I have had with this sort of stuff is at preview events. So I'm not an expert in any far stretch of like how the hardware works in other games. Job's probably a bit more in tune with that sort of stuff because he's got a VR headset. Doesn't have a PlayStation VR, but he's played a bunch of them. I was pretty skeptical about some of this stuff. Like, I obviously used it before and it works really well. The hardware is great. And yeah, man, I was pretty surprised by Blood and Truth. It is, I guess, coming off of the John Wick week where I saw fucking film 3 times that week. Jumping into a VR experience which was a shooter. You're basically this like special forces agent, and you're working through levels. And the way I sort of looked at it once I was done is sort of like a time crisis. But you're able to sort of select where you want to stand and where you want to move to. So it uses the PlayStation VR headset. You pop that on, and then you use the Move controllers, which are those controls with the little domes on them, and that's how it tracks your hand movements and whatnot. And so on the actual control system is a couple of different buttons, and that is how you sort of select in the world where you want to move to. And the way it does that is you look at an area in the world, and if it's somewhere that you can go to, like a little indicator will come up on the screen, and you hit the button, and your character will start moving to that area. And it could be behind cover, it could be behind a wall, a car, that sort of thing. And then there's also a strafing button on there, so you can press like strafe left, and the character will move to the left a little bit. And so you're not actually like freely moving around this world. You're sort of moving towards different like areas that have been set up for you to stand in. And then from there, it's like a time crisis game. You're holding these controllers in your hand. You've got a holster on you, so you can look down to where your legs are supposed to be, and there is a gun holster there, and your gun is like sitting where it should be in the holster. And so you put your hand down, you pull the trigger or the button to pull out the holster, and all of a sudden the gun is now in your hands, and you can wave it around, do all that sorts of stuff. You can switch hands if you want, if you're left-handed or right-handed, whatever, and then you start playing the game. You basically are working through levels, and there are people coming at you. You end up shooting them. You run out of ammo, and so how do you reload? Well, you've got a vest on. You have ammo clips in your vest, so you use for instance, your left hand to look. You can look down if you want, but you look at your vest. You put your hand where your vest is. Click the button. You've got ammo in your hand now, and then you slap it into the bottom of the gun. Reloads. Off you go. You've got bullets in there again. And then, you're literally, moving this gun around. There is an this gun in particular, had like a red dot. So I found that I could actually close an eye and then use the red dot to sort of shoot, get an accurate shot on people. Or once I guess you get really good, you can just have both your eyes open, whatever. But I was just experimenting with how it worked and whatnot. Thought it was really fascinating. But yeah, man, it was so much fun. It felt amazing. How you bring one of those classic old school time crisis games into the current generation, and for it to work outstandingly well, because your hand movements are mapped basically the way you expect them to do. You can do in the game there's a bullet time mechanic where things slow down, and you can see bullets coming at you really slowly. And so, from what I heard, and I didn't try it because it seemed quite hard, you could slow down time, pull a clip out of your gun, throw the clip in the air, and if you reloaded it, it would give you bonus damage or something like that. Like some fucking John Wick shit.
Right.
And then at certain points you couldn't actually see this, but you had a gun holstered on your back as well, so a submachine gun or something. So you could reach behind you, pull that out, and also use that as a weapon. At one stage, I had dual pistols. One had a silencer on it, and so I'm shh. You can't see this, obviously, people that are listening, but I'd have a gun in each hand, and I'd run out of bullets on my left hand, so I'd reach down to my right with the gun still in my hand, get ammo, and then slap it in that way, or reload both guns at the same time. Just really interesting ways of doing all this stuff. And then you get to the point where you don't have to look down at your holster anymore, or your ammo pack, because you know where it is instinctively. So you just reach down and click the button, and you start just sprinting through these levels really quickly. And there's things in the world you can interact with. There was bottles that I could sort of pick up and throw at people, or people would throw grenades at you, and you could interact with them. There were puzzle elements in the game. There was one part where there was a lock you had to break open, and you get this lockpick, and so in one hand you're holding a device to open the lock with, and in the other hand is the second part of it, and you're trying to pick this lock and moving it around. It's the sweet spots, and eventually the lock opens. And then they take that a step further later on, where there's like an electric barbed wire fence around the thing you need to lock, and so you've got to really be careful with your hand movements to make sure you're not, hitting the fence, otherwise you get zapped. There was a part where you had to climb a scaffolding, like a building scaffolding. Eventually you get to a point and like you're like, oh, I don't know where to go from here, but there's indicators like, oh, this might be somewhere where I need to go because this scaffolding is a different color. So instinctively, like, the game didn't tell me this, but I kind of just reached out and tried to grab onto it, and my character grabbed onto the wall and started climbing. And so now I'm like using my hands to climb this wall, and I'm working my way around the level now by climbing. So that stuff is really cool because it didn't tell me to do that. I just thought, what if I try this thing and see what happens? The same with the bottles. Like, it didn't tell me I could throw bottles, but I just was like, I'm going to try and grab this bottle. Okay, that worked. Fair enough. So that's really, yeah, man. Like, I had a lot of fun with this game. It's out next week. It seems like Sony's putting a lot of attention behind their VR stuff. They've obviously had a big focus on it in the past, but I feel like we're going to hear some more stuff through the next couple of months at least, especially with the announcement of them supporting PlayStation VR on the next generation of console, that it'll work. I think they're going to do a hardware refresher at some stage.
They have to.
That sounds like they'll do it. Not that this one doesn't work, because I was having a lot of fun with it, and especially after like getting out of like seeing John Wick and trying stupid stuff, and like watching other people play the game as well is really satisfying. Doing crazy things with your hands and whatnot. They had us sitting on chairs, and the TV was quite far away from us, but it wasn't until like my 40-minute session was up that I took the headset off and realized how far away the TV actually was. Like, you just kind of lose track of what's going on around you, which is like what you kind of want from these games. You want to be immersed and sort of in this world. And when they start doing these things like being interactable objects, or interacting with the world by being able to climb walls or scaffolding, or grabbing ammo in the environment, like that sort of stuff is really cool. And finding different ways to sort of interact with, what am I doing with my hands? I can put my gun down and holster it. That stuff is, it's really cool, and I'm excited to see where we go in the future with this sort of stuff, because I feel like everybody that I spoke to at this event after I'd played it was like, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I can wholeheartedly agree with them. I was not expecting to have that much fun with it. I don't know if it's going to hold up all the way through. From what I understand, it's probably going to be like a 6 to 8 hour experience.
Right.
Seems like they're really focusing on like story elements. They released a story trailer recently, but how they sort of change up what's going on in the game, like, are you just going to be walking around this environment shooting stuff, or are they going to have like scenes driving out of a car, or because we've seen them do things like that in the past, and I know there's going to be like some puzzle elements in there as well. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with more with that game, because it was fun. You guys should have definitely come along, because I think you would have had a blast with it.
Well, I couldn't find anywhere to write about it. I always feel bad going along unless they're like, hey, everyone come along.
Should have spoke about it on here, like me.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be on here. Were there any pencils in the game? Any fucking pencils?
There wasn't.
Missed opportunity. Maybe that comes later. Final boss fight.
Yeah. But I dug it a lot. It's called Blood and Truth. It's out next week. I don't know how much it's going for. I would assume it's not going to be a full release title, because no, it's not. I'm looking now, and like even EB's got it listed for $54. So
yeah, I mean, what's the install base off the top of my head? PSVR is like
Couple million.
A couple of million, which means that you probably don't want to go all out, AAA 30-hour experience. Probably don't even want that in VR, to be honest. Especially when you're tapped out at maximum of 2 million people buying it. I think that guess the benefit of anyone who owns it is they probably feel obliged to buy what comes out for it unless it's utter trash.
Yeah.
And the shooter games have always been fun. So you don't actually walk or teleport. You say where you want to go, and then the character walks there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different because usually it's either walking manually, which a lot of people suffer from nausea when that happens, and the way around that is teleporting. But I always found teleporting to feel a bit cheap.
Yes, but I mean, eventually someone will figure it out and we'll get there. But at least this way is like it's set places you can stand. Like the game wants you to be here. It's sort of like Time Crisis had that part where it sort of moved you along once you finished an area, and then occasionally it'd be like, which direction do you want to go? And you'd go down this way. Whereas this is more like, here's all these objects in the world you can hide behind, and you sort of pick your own path, but you're not necessarily, it's not on rails, and it's not free roaming, but there's still, like, points that you can go to. There were stealth sections in this game where, when I got the second pistol, it was a silencer, and you could probably stealth that whole section, but I fucked up and didn't kill somebody, so then a all-out brawl started, and I was like, fuck it, alright, dual guns, let's go.
I'm sure you didn't mind.
No. But yeah, man, I had a lot of fun with it. I think people, if you're, clamoring for a PlayStation VR game, hopefully it lives up to expectations, because I enjoyed what I saw, the 30 to 40 minutes that I played.
Yeah, I always flirt with the idea of getting one, and then
I looked at the prices afterwards,
and then realizing that I'm probably not going to use it enough to justify the price. So
yeah,
I
might wait for the next, whatever the next one is, because I think they'll probably have one out in the next maybe year or so, within the next year. Yeah,
you'd imagine that'll be a big push, because I mean the benefit of better core hardware for any sort of VR, and I mean we saw that with the jump between the core PS4 and the PS4 Pro, right? Was that it allows you to, you need to have 90 frames per second, and to have 90 frames per second, you've got to lower the frame rate depending on the hardware, or not the frame rate. Sorry, you got to lower the resolution. So you want higher resolution and better frame rate, and hopefully they go wireless, which I'm pretty sure is where the PC ones are heading at the moment, or have already had. I think Oculus just released something, and that makes a lot of sense, because the wires are again a pain in the ass. So if you can remove all of those barriers of entry, and this first lot of VR headsets sorts out the problems that people have with it, like the nausea and the frame rate, and people have finally cracked that, it's usually the second version or the third iteration of a technology where they fucking nail it, and that's where you want to jump in. So yeah, if you've resisted for this long, why not?
Yeah, and I know there's other good things on there, stuff like Resident Evil, which I would probably never play in VR anyway, because I didn't want to preview it in VR either. That seems too terrifying.
You've seen the video of Job, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't find it that scary. I thought I would, but yeah, I didn't. Not in VR, no. But
fair enough.
Yeah, but if you're susceptible to jump scares, yeah, absolutely shouldn't.
Right. All right, that's the Sony section. I think. Is it? Oh wait, Team Sonic Racing. Is that Sony?
Oh, Sega.
No, people are going to be like, what an idiot. Fucking Sega. Or you thought it was Sony. No, because we don't really have Sega here in Australia, so I'm not sure who would be publishing that.
Well, I can save you then, and very briefly talk about Crash Team Racing. Now, I have to say it's slow, because I'm like, does it have the character name first or team first? Which is what Team Sonic Racing obviously just took Crash Team Racing and said, how do we make it sound different enough? We can't say Sonic Team Racing. That sounds like a rip-off. We'll go Team Sonic Racing.
Yeah.
But Crash, which I've played a couple of times, is from what I've told, I never played the original, very faithful to the original, but also for me feels like just a straight up Mario Kart ripoff. Sorry, Sony fans, it is. I don't think it was trying to be anything different at the time. It's still good, it's still fun, but it's fun and good in the same ways that Mario Kart is, right? It's that exact experience where Team Sonic Racing gets a little bit more credit for doing something different is that it actually does the team racing really well, in that you are dependent on your teammates for victory. Like, you can get first place, but if your other two teammates, whether they're AI or controlled by someone else, if they go over the finish line last, you're probably going to lose on a tournament overall, based on your standings. So you actually, your teams, like if the other team you're playing against, the other two teams you're playing against consistently get second, third, and fourth or whatever, or those sort of single digit placements, they're probably going to beat you on the longer term. So that's cool, and they've really lent into the idea of the team aspect, in that if you're going behind everyone, you can follow this kind of like gold trail to get a speed boost. If you spun out, you can have someone like on your team zip by you, and it will get you back into the race real fast. And you can also share your items that you pick up. So if you get something and you're like in first, like, I don't need it, like, hit the button and you'll offer it to someone on your teammate, one of your teammates, which is cool. And then you've got the team boost, which you have to hit at the same time for it to be effective. The biggest problem that it had, I mean, it's out now, so I played a preview like 1 or 2 weeks before it came out. Biggest problem that it has, at least then, was that it's so fucking busy in its UI that I was figuring stuff out like in my 5th, 6th, 7th race, like, I'm like, what is that? Because it's so fast. It is fast, and it is awesomely like gravity defying, the way that the tracks curl around and stuff. It does a lot more of that than even what Mario Kart did, I would argue, which is great. And it definitely has that sense of speed that you get from a Sonic game, and kind of translating those classic Sonic levels, like the casino level, for instance, turning that into its own racetrack is fucking cool as shit. The music's fantastic, but that UI is so busy that you will be intimidated and you'll get lost. And there's a tiny little triangle, because we're playing on PS4, a tiny little triangle for your team boost icon that pops up over your car. We had to have people standing behind us watching, going, "Oh, your special's up, your team special's up." And we're like, "What?" Oh, it's like, it's not this big. Like, of all the things to make small, they make the most fucking important thing tiny. And then you've got like these giant pictures of faces in the corners of screens for, like, I don't know, your position and then your teammates' positions, and pretty intimate. Like, if they cleared the UI or give you the option to clear it out, it's got some cool stuff going on, and enough for, like, if you prefer co-op over competitive in your party games and you like your kart races, that's definitely the market that it's going for. But if you're like the person that wants to come first and, steal that win off someone with that blue shell at the last minute, then this is definitely not the game for you. It's definitely more team oriented. And so, but if that appeals to you, if you're sick of coming last in every Mario Kart game, you can actually come last with your buddies. You come first and second and maybe win and be like, yeah, I helped. You didn't, but you'll still win on a long enough scale.
Yeah. And so that was on the PlayStation you played?
Yeah, I mean, both of them. I mean, Crash. God damn, I have to look at what I've written down just so I don't say wrong. Crash Team Racing is, I think, is it PS4 exclusive? Maybe it's not. Anyways, we played both on PS4.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both fun, but for me, Mario Kart is never a game that I've played by myself. I've always played it in party situations. I've always played it at least split screen with someone else, because that's where it's fun, it's not the kind of game that's designed to be played solo, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't see why you'd want to do that with Team Sonic Racing or Crash Team Racing either. But there's a lot of fun. Again, like, it's a perfect little party game. It's pretty easy to learn, and they've got the same sort of philosophy of, if you kind of coming last, it seems to be that you get the boosts, and if you're coming first, you get shit that you can drop behind you and stuff like that. So it's good fun. Just another kart game. But if you're looking for something that's slightly different from Mario Kart, you can find it in either of those options.
Cool. All right. The other game that I checked out was called Dauntless, and this is, I believe it's just come out of like early access. It's a free-to-play game. I would call it like a Monster Hunter Lite.
Okay.
Have you played any Monster Hunter games before?
Not enough to comment on them. No, yeah.
I haven't played a lot. Like, I've played them at preview events. I played the last Monster Hunter that came out. I
World, right?
enjoyed parts of it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I was just like, I felt like there's too many issues with it, too many design issues that I didn't like. So this Dauntless is basically an online action game where in Monster Hunter, you're basically going out in these environments and tracking down these giant beasts and trying to kill them. And eventually you'll kill them and you'll get items off of them, and that allows you to craft new gear and that sort of thing. But they're in these environments that you can go out with, and there's other things going on in the world. There's like different animals that you run into, and you sort of go exploring it. You're actually like tracking them in a certain sense. Like you'll be looking for their footprints, and then eventually you get enough of that information, and it leads you to like, all right, you should be looking in this area over here. And it can take a bit of time to do this sort of thing. Whereas Dauntless is more like I say it's like a light, because from what I've experienced so far, you're pretty much just slaying giant monsters. Like there's no exploration. It just kind of pops you into an environment. You can sort of run around and collect crafting gear, things like plants and whatnot. But for the rest of it, it's just like, all right, I'm gonna go around and basically like kill these giant monsters that you can find. And so what ends up happening is you just sort of drop into this world, run up to a monster, and just start bashing it. And I've played a couple of hours so far. There is not a huge variety at the moment in terms of sort of like the monster design. They're all pretty samey. Sort of like all of them are on all fours, sort of walking around. They've all got tails, and you can you sort of just like bash at them until they die. It sort of takes that Monster Hunter trope where you can cut off their tails and that'll stop their tail attacks, or like you can focus on doing damage to a certain area of their body, and eventually they'll get wounded and you'll do more damage to that part. So like those sort of things are interesting. There's bits where I've come across like it's like a monster they call them behemoths, and like it's got like a stone shell across it, and then you sort of chip away at their stone shell like on their leg, and eventually their leg is exposed, or their tail is exposed, and their head is exposed, and so you're chipping away at different aspects of their body, and that allows you to do more damage, and eventually it's like, all right, they'll sort of flee and run away, and then it's like stage 2, you got to go find them again, and then they've got different movesets you got to try and figure out how to battle them. So in terms of that aspect, it's very similar to that sort of Monster Hunter, like what Monster Hunter does, but I think the variety is there at the moment that I've seen so far, and I've slain like 7 monsters at the moment. Other than that, like, hey, this is the ice monster, or this is the fire monster, and this is the grass one. They're all pretty similar in terms of their designs, or sort of what they're doing. Whereas Monster Hunter's like, here's a fucking T-Rex, and here's this flying giant moth thing. There's a bit of variety in sort of what they do. So yeah, it's from what I've experienced so far, that's purely what the game is. You're just going out, killing these giant behemoths, and trying to figure out like what their attack patterns are, and then getting crafting materials out of them, and then upgrading your weapons or upgrading your armor, and then going out and getting the next level thing that you want to go fight. Because there's a leveling system. You level up your gear, you level up your weapons, and then they've got attack power, and that kind of lets you progress through the different behemoths that the world's got. And then it does the thing that Monster Hunter does where, you can replay the same behemoths over and over again, and that allows you to get like check marks off this book that they've got, and then that gives you rewards, so you're sort of incentivized to go back and replay them a bunch, try different weapons, try different ways of sort of taking this thing down. Monster Hunter was very into that sort of stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, like from what I've played so far, it's pretty, like, it seems like it's got some fun stuff in there, but it's very low key. Like there's not a lot going on. It seems like a great start, but just the world is like empty. There's not much going on. Like if it was going out and exploring and like actually trying to hunt these things, that'd be pretty cool. But that's not really what's happening. It's just kind of like a run around and just either shoot or attack these things that are in the world. and it's free to play. So they've got the Fortnite, the Call of Duty, the PUBG style like book that you can buy, like the season pass, where it's got 2 tiers. Here's your main one where it's all free and you can go along and unlock things cosmetically in the game, or you can buy the season pass and you get bonus upgrades and all that sort of stuff. So from what I understand, it's all purely cosmetic from what I can see so far.
Right.
I had a quick look through. I couldn't find anything that was like extra damage on weapons, like a pay to win type stuff. It did look like it was all cosmetic from what I saw, which is good. But yeah, it's just, there's not a lot going on unless I'm missing something. Like, I tried watching a bunch of streams yesterday. The top 5 Twitch channels were, everybody was in the menu looking at like stuff, and eventually I found like, oh, this guy's actually in a game fighting something, and it looked like the stuff that I was experiencing. You can play it with a team, a group of people, much like Monster Hunter. It sort of incentivizes you to go out and play with other people.
Okay.
At the moment, it's quite buggy. The one that I keep running into is there is a hold E to interact with stuff, either pick up crafting items or mine this resource, or in the world there are these like deposits of like a healing pool or something. There's some sort of thing you can interact with on the ground and it allows you to heal. And generally, from what I found, they're in areas where you'll fight these behemoths. So it's like, all right, I'm going to back off and heal myself. But I've had issues where you hold E and just like nothing happens. Like, it doesn't register that you're picking this thing up, and like you press E again and then just nothing. It takes like a couple of times for it to sort of register. And so like out in the world when you're trying to get resources, I think it hasn't been a huge issue for me. But when I'm running around and trying to heal in the middle of a fight, then that's a problem, because all of a sudden, like, it's not working. Oh fuck, like, I've just wasted a bunch of time. So that's a problem. The other issue is the game has disconnected me from the server a couple of times. Yesterday I was playing, it happened 3 times over the span of about, 2 hours. That can be a problem because some of these fights can last a little while, 15-20 minutes. I'm sure the other fights can last even longer when you're trying to learn them, because it gives you about half an hour to actually do it. Like, there's a countdown. You need to get it done in a certain amount of time. So that's a bit of a pain because you lose your progress. It takes a bit of time to spin up a server, because the first time you go out bounty hunting, like you basically have a bounty board. You click on the animal you want to go find. It says it's looking for a server. That takes a little bit of time. Eventually a server will be found, and then it'll throw you in there and off you go. So it is spinning up servers. From what I gather, if you are in Australia, it does seem to be spinning up Australian servers, because I was getting about 14 ping. I used a bunch of network resource tools that I've got to try and figure out where the fuck I was getting attached to. In saying that, there was some like laggy situations sometimes that I was noticing, with like it just warping around a little bit. And then on top of that, disconnects. And also, like, I've heard of people having issues with getting into queues. Like yesterday in particular, there was a lot of server problems, and that was kind of like their launch window. They launched the night before. I didn't play it much that night. I played like 20-30 minutes and then went to bed. Woke up and just heard that they're having all sorts of server issues. But when I jumped on, they said they fixed it, but then I was getting those disconnects. So I don't know if that was something else or what was going on, but that was pretty annoying. So I haven't had a great experience with it so far. Like, I kind of get where they're going, but it just seems pretty bare bones for what is out there at the moment. And hopefully they can build upon that, because, like, yeah, there's interesting ideas there. And I like the whole idea of like learning boss battles and attack patterns and finding out what their weaknesses are and how to destroy them and whatnot. That was always a cool part of Monster Hunter. It just wasn't executed great, and it seems like this is even a step down to that. So yeah, it's called Dauntless. It's out now on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, cross-play. It's the first cross-play game on PlayStation as well, so you can play with your friends on whatever platform you want.
definitely sounds like not my kind of game.
Probably not. No, I wouldn't think so.
I'll
I'm
gladly
sure
avoid
we'll
it.
get some messages from people saying like, "Hey, it's really cool." Yeah, it probably is. I just wasn't a fan of. I enjoyed the idea of Monster Hunter. I just didn't think they pulled it off very well. I wish it was better than what I played because. Yeah.
What was the Steam
Dauntless.
rating? Do you know?
Dauntless?
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
It's an Epic. I think it's on the Epic Store.
Oh, it's not on Steam, right?
No, I'm running it through the Epic Store.
One of those.
I'm running a lot of games on the Epic Store lately.
Because they're not available on Steam.
Yeah, because everyone's going Epic, more money.
We got to go back to World War Z at some point. Did you refund it? Or did you get it?
I never got
You
it.
never got it. All right,
No.
I got to go back with Job then.
No. All right, moving on. Splitgate.
Yeah, have you played it?
Talking about early access games. I have not played it yet. No.
It was supposed to launch the other day, and they delayed it last minute. It's going to be free to play, so you people can be free to play it, which is good. But what it is, in its very, very basic pitch, is it's Halo meets Portal. That's the best way to describe it. It's arena-based combat. I was expecting it to be kind of like more like Quake, to be honest, like a lot faster paced, but with the portals. So you've got the portal gun, and you can shoot an entry portal and an exit portal just as you would in any of the Portal games, except now you've got guns as well, so you can do some pretty crazy trick shots. You've got the same sort of physics at play, where if you put one portal high or low or whatever and you jump through it, you'll get the speed to be able to shoot out. And then the shooting feels very much like Halo. And the guns even feel like they're inspired by Halo. In fact, the movement speed is probably a little bit on the slower side for me. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit faster to match that kind of three-dimensional thinking that you can do with the portals. You can go through other people's portals. You can obviously shoot projectiles through portals, although I didn't really experience too much of that. And this was during its beta phase. There were Australian servers. So... That's important. It also seemed that people were already running their own servers. Like I went on to a low-gravity Instagib server, which was a lot of fun. You're just kind of flying across the sky and taking those sort of railgun-style shots and watching someone get messed up and ragdoll around the place. I don't really have anything to say beyond that. I'm glad that they made it free-to-play. I'm not sure how they're going to monetize it. It seems like one of those games that will live or die based on its initial interest. Because the core premise will either grab you or it won't. I don't think it's going to be able to do anything massively major that's different outside of that. But it's certainly a kind of game that I'm going to try at launch when it actually comes out. Have a few games, see if it's that kind of quick fix, 15 to 30 minute, kind of warm up or having a break kind of game, as opposed to something that's a bit more like Mordhau or Battlefield, where you kind of end up carving off an hour or more to make sure that you have a decent game. This one seems to be a little bit more, quick to play. They're much smaller maps. I think it was maybe 10 to 16 players or something like that. There was deathmatch and team deathmatch modes as well. But it was fun. It definitely rewards headshots. And the arsenal was pretty tight from what I played with. You can play against bots if you want to learn the ropes offline. I think it's map knowledge in any first-person shooter is essential. But in this one, I think it's particularly essential because it's not just learning where things are, where weapons drop and stuff like that, but it's also learning where you can pop portals and how that changes how you approach certain areas. So there's definitely another level of experimentation and knowledge to levels that and things to take into account. Like attack vectors, like a choke point might not be a choke point for long if someone's left a portal above you or something like that. So it has the potential to have these kind of amazing clips and awesome flanks and bullshit shots. But, I only played a little bit of it initially. And, again, waiting for release to hopefully have a player base to go through some matches and see what's going on there. But for someone who's wanted a proper kind of Halo experience on PC for a while, even though there was that mod, that very unofficial Eldorado, I want to say, which you can still play, that was cool. And I think, obviously, Microsoft's announced that they're bringing some stuff, which will be great because, like, with the higher frame rates and keyboard mouse aiming, I had a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of fun with the original Halo that Gearbox ported on PC, and it had like a flamethrower and shit like that. And it was a bit clunky in ways, but like it just felt better on PC to be able to like pull off some headshots and shit like that consistently, which meant there was fewer people just jumping around, like doing that angled attack downwards because, well, you're going to jump, you're really slow. I'm just going to ping you in the head 3 times and you're dead. See you later. So yeah, it'll definitely scratch that itch, I hope, until something official is released like later this year, isn't it? When they saying for Halo, I'm talking about Master Chief Collection.
No idea.
Oh, well, it doesn't follow his Halo news, this guy, apparently.
Don't follow that. No. But yeah, Splitgate looks interesting. I've seen a lot of videos. It looks pretty hardcore.
Yeah, right. Well, what I played was not hardcore. It's not to say that it won't be that, but like it was pretty easy to pick up and play. But like I said, there's definitely that depth of learning, and I'm sure that there will be some bullshit plays that come out of that. But it was also not so intimidating that I felt like I was going to get my ass handed to me. You were rewarded for having your basic core shooter skills intact, and then you can get things like you can do the high risk plays to get to the rocket launcher and stuff like that, which one hit kills people. And I can already see the chat filled with people calling you cheesy for for going for it, or the railgun type weapon.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's fun, and again, free to play, no barrier of entry. So hopefully it doesn't get so popular that cheaters infiltrate it, but it gets popular enough that there's matches to find. What a weird point to want games to exist in when they're free to play.
Yeah, I remember the logo is like a sports logo. It's like blue and white, isn't it?
Yeah. It looks. I was calling it Slipgate for the longest time, but no, it's Splitgate. Okay,
Splitgate.
My bad.
Yeah. Slipgate makes more sense.
Probably was taken though, right? Because that's like a sci-fi thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it. Yeah, they're like, let's move some of the letters around.
Yeah, they're like, well, we're going to get sued if we do that. Splitgate, there are 2 gates, I guess. Yeah, it still works. It's fine, as long as it's good. But I'm not sure. I don't even think they said an ETA. They just said that they're working hard on it, and there was some bugs that they hadn't anticipated, and they clearly want to hit the ground running. I think that's with Steam, you kind of get 2 strikes, right? Like you can have an early access game that's disastrous even, and then you can fix it to a point and you get that second chance where it just launches 1.0 and your likes reset or your rating resets. The one I'm thinking of is, do you ever play Wreckfest?
No.
It's cool, man. It was a THQ racing game, awesome physics and stuff like that. I'm not really into racing games, but I had fun with what I played. But if you went and followed it at early access stage, it was like, at some stage, it was like, I think mostly negative. And they turned that right around. Like, credit to them. It doesn't happen often. Like, you might be able to turn a mostly positive into a very positive or even a positive, but you don't often see the chalk and cheese stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Fair enough. What else we got here? I guess I talk about mobile games quite a bit around here. I like getting on my phone. I play a lot. I don't know about you, but Empires and Puzzles is like my jam at the moment. And
is that a game or is that a genre?
No, it's a game.
Empires and Puzzles. That's not a fucking game. That's a description.
It's it's one of those like match 3 games, and
okay.
There's a bunch of like different levels you play through and whatnot. That's like my obsession for the last couple of months, and on top of that, Candy Crush Friends. Candy Crush Friends, I think it's called. Yeah.
Clearly not an obsession if you don't know what it's called.
Well, because I've got like 3 different
Candy Crushes
Crush games on here that I like my games that I actually play quite a lot of. Because Job and I talk about this all the time. We're looking for games to play their own mobile. The other one I installed recently is Pokemon Rumble Rush. Haven't played a lot of that, but I'll get to it eventually. But yeah, Candy Crush Friends and Empires and Puzzles are the 2 that I check pretty much daily. Right. Empires and Puzzles at least like 2 or 3 times a day. I get in quite a lot of trouble for checking it that often. So yeah, man, like the thing is, I can never find any. Like, we're always looking for good games to play on mobile, and occasionally there's some good ones out there, but most of the time there's not a lot. And Apple was kind enough to loan me an iPhone to check out some of the games on their platform, because they've got a huge selection as well that I don't usually get a chance to see. And one of the games that I've been playing is called The Gardens Between, and it is a game that we talked about a couple of years back that we saw at PAX, and I walked away really liking it. It's from an Australian team called the Voxel Agents, and it's sort of like a puzzle game,
Yeah, right.
where you're playing as these two kids who get stuck in this sort of like fantasy world. Um, the way the levels are designed are sort of like you're walking around them in a circle, and you're trying to get to like the peak of the level, which is the top. And I guess the way you look at it is every time you sort of go around, it's like I guess like a cone, and so you're sort of walking your way up this giant hill in a circle, and along this way you'll run into different puzzle elements. And the way you move in this environment is by holding left to go forward, and that sort of moves time along with you. And then the way that you go backwards is, you hold left, and that'll take you backwards. And while you're doing this, the sort of environment changes as well as you moving, and you'll get to points in the environment where you got to try and figure out like what a puzzle is. For instance, I can talk about this moment where in the game you get to a point where one of the characters will stand on a plank of wood, and then on top of that plank of wood is like a giant hacksaw, because everything is sort of like expanded out and over the top. Like they're basically the way the world is designed is they're looking at their past memories, and like, hey, here's a giant TV that's sort of sitting in this world, or here's a giant like controller that's plugged in, or a lamppost, or a lampshade. And so you'll get to this part in this particular level. You jump on this like a saw that's sort of halfway through a plank of wood, and you jump on it. And when you jump on it, it sort of moves down and cuts the wood a little bit. And you can keep walking forward and nothing will happen. But if you keep jumping backwards on the wood, so moving time forwards and backwards, this character will keep jumping on the wood and jumping off it, and eventually it'll cut the wood in half. And that'll allow like a new ramp to form, and then the other character can then start walking up that, and that'll allow you to progress further in the level. And so that's sort of the way they introduce puzzles and ways that you can sort of figure them out. There's things like you'll run into these orbs in the world, and like one character will pick them up and the other character will keep moving in the game, and you've got to try and figure out like what the puzzle behind it is that you need to do. Sometimes there'll be objects in the world that'll like take that light away from you, and you've got to try and figure out how you stop that thing from happening. And generally it's like once you go forward a little bit more, you'll find something along the way that allows you to interact with something, and that'll maybe switch that part of the device off, and all of a sudden you can go backwards again and then pick up that lamp and then progress forward to the next area. And then like each world is sort of like a different memory for these kids, and so you'll start off and it's like, oh, here's like a, like I said before, like a giant TV with a console set up, and you're sort of progressing through the level, and the next one might be like a tree house or something like that. So and each time they sort of do this, they're sort of introducing new puzzle elements to you and ways to sort of figure out how you progress through each environment. So for instance, there's one part where you've got this like lamp thing that I was talking about that you need to carry, but you can put them on these blocks, and once you do that, when you start moving forward throughout the world, as time goes forward, the environment starts changing. And so for instance, that block might move and jump somewhere else in the world, like interacts with the world. And eventually, like one of the levels was there was about 5 or 6 of these different blocks that were moving around, and you needed to figure out like which light you needed to put the block on. And the way that the level was designed was there were different paint buckets spread throughout this environment, so eventually there'd be different paint on these blocks, and you can kind of figure out like the last place these blocks would end up, and then you'd be like, all right, well, I know which block I need to sort of focus on while this level is spinning around, and eventually that's like the way to solve the puzzle. So yeah, there's some really interesting and smart ideas that are going on there in terms of like really simple mechanics of moving. Like all you're doing is moving forwards and backwards in the game, but you're interacting with the world, and causing these objects to behave differently depending on what you've already done in the environment as well. So they can get a little bit complex. So that's there's some cool puzzle solving sort of things that are going on. The game looks really pretty. The the art style is fantastic. I remember seeing it like a couple of years back, and that was like one of the standout games for me when I walked away from PAX, having played it. I feel like it was maybe the one that you might have been there at that PAX.
That one PAX.
That one PAX that you were there. It might have been that one. It was like 2 years back. But yeah, the game is out on iPhone now. It was released on other platforms before, on like your console platforms and whatnot. But this one is designed at the moment for touch screens, and it works really well. Super intuitive. It's, like I said, really basic. You just move left or right on the screen, and it moves these two characters for you, and that's pretty much it. Runs really great. I did talk to the developers a little bit, and they've got it running at 30 frames at the moment, and they're talking about like they're pretty comfortable with thinking they can bump it up to 60. So that may come in an update later on for some of these devices, but yeah, man, it's a really awesome looking Australian game that I think people should definitely check out if you've got an iPhone and you enjoy if you enjoy like good quality phone games, because we don't see a lot of them. A lot of it is like free to play microtransactions with like these energy mechanics that I don't really enjoy too much, and some of them feel a bit too like, I don't know, they're just kind of trying to take advantage of people.
Yeah, they fucking harass you as well. Like, you install it, you enjoy it, and then every 3 hours you're getting this fucking, oh, this so-and-so needs this, and you got this in the game, and you're like, I want to play you when I want to play you. I don't want you to bother me.
Yeah, and I feel like it's hard to find really good mobile games.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, I'm really liking what they're doing, like what this team is doing, especially what Apple's doing in the gaming scene, because they're pushing a lot of interesting games. Like, I've had a look at their library, and there's a lot of stuff on there that looks great, and there's even stuff on there that has shown up in my account, that games that I used to play on my, back when I had an iPhone, but I'm like, these were really good games. Like, why is it I can't find this sort of stuff these days on, because I play most of my games on Android, and a lot of it is just, man, a lot of it is just junk, like free to play junk. You look at the like top 10 list, and it is just stuff that is not interesting to me at all. It's not appealing. And I don't want mobile games to go that way. I remember the days of like when these types of devices first came along, your Fruit Ninjas and your Jetpack Joyrides and Cut the Rope and things like that. Really fun games, and you just don't see. Well, I don't see a lot of those anymore. But so I'm keen to check out some more stuff on the iPhone, because yeah, that's kind of where things kicked off. And still these days, you see a lot of developers being like, I'm going to put my game out on the iPhone first. And you're like, all right, fair enough. Cool.
Except if you're on an Android phone, like most people. Yeah. So Apple's clearly cornered the market there, you think? Like a better
it seems like
percentage?
they're on a big push at the moment on games. They obviously announced that new subscription service that's coming later on in the year, which will be a big deal. Yeah, super smart. So we'll find out more information about that, and sort of what that's going to entail. It'll be like your Netflix for video games, or your Game Pass for things that Xbox do, or the EA Pass that EA does. Like what games are on there, and sort of how much that's going to cost each month will be interesting, and whether or not they tie it into anything else. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But I'll definitely be talking about more iPhone games now that I've got this to sort of play around with, because there's a couple that I've been told about I should check out, and I'm definitely keen to see what else is on that platform.
Yeah, it's a shame about Android though. Like, I know usually before every press trip I'll go and have a look at the latest list of best games for Android, and I just end up scrolling through it and going, nah, that sounds like shit.
Yeah.
The only kind of cool things are like, and I still haven't got around to playing it even though I own it, is things like Knights of the Old Republic and kind of those older games that have made their way to these sort of devices where you're like, I mean, that's predominantly what turn-based combat, so I'm not going to be too put off by that when it comes down to it. I'm like, that kind of makes sense to port to that. But outside of that, yeah, you're right, man. Like, outside of Plants vs. Zombies 2, and that game bothers the fuck out of you if you have it installed, like with notifications, that game I've put in, I don't know, 40, 50 hours over.
Yeah.
I stopped playing it for like years, and then I'll go back to it, and they've put in this massive update, a new world, and still haven't spent a cent. So that game was a lot of fun. But I haven't had one since then. I tried that Assassin's Creed one a while ago when it was in early access, and
Yeah.
that didn't gel with me. I got into Fallout for a while, but then that got a bit stupid. So I'm pretty sure they've fixed them since then. But if you happen to play them too early when they hadn't properly balanced stuff, you just find that it was massively grindy. And you'd start to see, like you talked about, the idea of seeing behind the curtain and seeing that they either want you to pay money or they want you to only play certain times a day because you're working on a meter and there's diminishing returns and you've done your fucking dailies. So what's the point?
Yeah, right. No, I agree. There's a lot of ordinary stuff out there. But no, Gardens Between, definitely recommend it. It like won a bunch of awards way back. So yeah, it's definitely something people have checked out. It looks like the style of it. It's just really an interesting sort of art style that I think people would dig. My only concern is maybe the price.
How much is it?
I'm not 100% sure, but let me have a quick look. At the moment, it's telling me it is $20 USD on the App Store, but I don't know if that's the Mac, maybe the Mac version or something. It's probably something I should have looked up, but anyway.
So there's definitely like a hesitation when the price gets too much. I love that cartoon that I can't remember which generation phone it was released for, but it was like someone goes and buys a new iPhone and it's like $1,000, and then they have to pay $5 for a game and they're raging about it, like $5 for a game, my $1,000 device. Yeah.
Says here $5.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too much. You pay $5.
I was looking at the Mac store, which is the obviously the PC Mac version. But yeah, $5. I think it's a reasonable price. I don't mind paying money for games that are on mobile devices that aren't going to be spewing up ads all the time or have some sort of, hey, you can only play this game for 10 minutes until the energy runs out. I don't enjoy that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm more than happy to pay money for good games that aren't going to annoy me with like the freemium sort of content. So
yeah, because fuck that shit.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll definitely be talking about more iPhone stuff to come.
For anyone who has an iPhone.
Yeah.
No one on this show.
What else we got here? I think we're running towards the end. Let me check. Yes, we are. So the last game that I've been playing came out, I think it was yesterday. It's called Observation. It is a... how would I put this? It's an indie game published by Devolver. Just happened to be wearing that today.
Hey, on brand.
It's a science fiction thriller game mixed with some sort of adventure elements. So you're basically, in this game, you are awoken on a space station. But you're not a person. You are the ship's AI.
Okay.
And there's another character. There's a person on the ship who awakes, and her name is Emma, and she is giving you commands to try and figure out what has gone wrong on the ship. So initially, she starts off with pretty basic stuff. So she'll be like, "Hey, your name is Sam," and the ship's AI's name is Sam, and she'll be like, "Hey, Sam, can you are your systems okay? Can you authenticate me?" And she'll say like her name, and up on the screen will come up like a waveform, like her talking, and you can either accept or reject like her like identity, like her telling you stuff. And the first time she talks to you, the audio is like cutting out a little bit, so you can sort of fuck around with it and be like, yeah, actually reject, because that didn't work properly. And then she'll be like, oh damn it, and then say the sort of same line again, but this time it could be a bit more crisp, like the audio's coming through properly this time, and then you can be like, all right, accept, I recognize your authentication, and now you can start giving me commands. And then she'll be like, hey, can you run a ship's diagnostics, tell me what systems are up. And then so you're basically opening up menus in the game, and running through, like, interacting with items on the screen and being like, all right, I need to communicate this information back to Emma and let her know what's going on. So you open up like a screen that's got ship diagnostics on it, and it's like, oh, here are all the systems that are running and here are the ones that have failed, and you'll click a button to like tell her about the ones that are failing, and then like bits of dialogue will play out, and sort of there's like this backwards and forwards of her like talking to herself or like talking to you as the ship's AI, and then that's where the journey begins. It's like her trying to figure out what has gone on this ship, like where's the rest of her crew gone, like why is there all this damage on the ship, and eventually sort of puzzling the pieces together, what's happening exactly. The game all up is probably about a 6 to 8 hour experience. Very narrative driven. It's not super complex. It's basically a giant puzzle game. A lot of it is interacting with objects on a screen or your interface and trying to relay information back or trying to fix certain things that are going on. There is there's a bit of movement. Most of the time you're actually looking through the ship's cameras, so there's different cameras set up throughout the ship, and the ship is sort of split up into different hubs. It's, if you sort of think of it like the International Space Station, so there's like a hub where the Chinese are, and there's like a Russian hub, a UN hub, and as the game progresses you sort of go through the different hubs in the ship to try and figure out like where everybody is. Are there other people alive? Like, what happened to these other people? And trying to get all these systems back online so you can sort of get around. And eventually it's like, all right, you put yourself in like a sphere, and it's this sphere that can move around the environment, and that allows you to navigate the ship and interact with things a little bit more. To the point where it's like, all right, now you're outside the ship and you're looking at damage like outside the ship, what's sort of gone wrong, and trying to relay that information back to Emma. I really enjoyed this game a lot. It is extremely like atmospheric. They do a great job with like all the detail that's going on in the game. I was a bit hesitant when I first started playing the game because I was told it is a science fiction thriller game, but the moment I started up, I was like, this is a fucking horror game. I'm gonna have the shit scared out of me. Like, I wasn't up to play that game at that point. It is not a horror game. It's got horror elements, I would say, but they don't do like. It's not like they're doing jump scares or anything like that at you. It's just more like the atmosphere of things that are going on, and that sort of stuff. So if you're like thinking about picking it up, but you're not sure about like the horror, like you don't get fucking shit scared out of you by like creepy fucking like ghost people coming out of nowhere, like it doesn't do that.
Not that kind of game.
No, it is very like all the lights are turned off and what is going on, like powering up subsystems and making things switch back on. There is obviously an overall story of weird shit that's going on, but I won't dive into any of that sort of stuff. There are a couple of cases that I did get lost because eventually the ship is pretty big that it gets you to roam around in. And to start off with, it's quite small and you kind of work your way around it pretty easily. But eventually, once you start getting the whole ship unlocked, and it allows you to sort of traverse to different areas of the ship, when it asks you to do some of the tasks, you'll be like, oh, okay, I've got to open up this menu and be like, all right, whereabouts in the ship am I looking for this part, this thing that I need to do? Because there'll be like a map, the ship that you can sort of look at and then be like, all right, I want to go to this camera over here. And then you look in that room and be like, all right, where's the things I need to where's the computer I need to access to jump into to look at stuff. And sometimes it'll be like someone's computer laptop and there's a password on it, so you need to find the password to get into it, and maybe the password is stuck up on a wall in their room somewhere, or maybe it is in I don't know, like a audio log or something like that. So there's those type of puzzle elements in there, and there's other bits that it kind of throws at you and whatnot, but for the most part it is you interacting with objects on a screen and like figuring out like puzzles pretty much, and advancing the story and that sort of thing.
And
So
not a
yeah,
horror game
it's no, not a horror game
at all.
at all. It is. I mean, there's a couple moments in there where I did get a bit lost, like I said, and that was mainly because it was just bits of it too big. Like there was one point where it was asking me to restart some servers, and the thing that I needed to do was basically next to where I was standing, or where my robot man was floating around. But at that point, I started like looking at the map and being like, "Where the fuck is the server room in this thing?" And like investigating all these different rooms. And it wasn't until I spent like half an hour looking around that I eventually got back to this room and was like, "I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing." I've looked in every room like a bunch of times, and then I looked a little bit left of like or right of the thing it told me to, like where I initially started, and there was someone who's worked in IT, I was like, "That's a server right there." Fuck. And then I went over to it, and yeah, funnily enough, it was what I needed to interact with. So there was like two occasions where I got a bit lost. The other occasion was the first time I went out in the spaceship outside, and it wanted me to reset some clamps, and I did not know where I was supposed to go because I may have wandered off to an area I wasn't supposed to be in. So yeah, I got a bit lost. I was like, "Fuck that! I'm going this way." Maybe my fault, but anyway. It's a really enjoyable game. I think if you're into those types of things, like those... I mean, this isn't really a walking simulator, but it's sort of along that vein where it's very narrative driven. You're obviously doing more than some of those like Gone Home / Firewatch games. Like there's more interaction in there. And there's some really smart things they do with like just the way you're like interacting with people, and like, hey, you're the ship's AI, like how would you behave? Obviously they take a lot of inspiration from things like Space Odyssey, and very sci-fi driven shows, and the game looks like outstanding. Like it's a really good looking game too. So it's hard not to recommend it. I've checked out a couple reviews. Seems to be doing pretty well. Like a lot of people really like it, so I don't know who I wouldn't recommend it to at this stage, because I think the story is great. It's so like drags you in. Like you want to know what has gone on, and then it gets to place, and you're like, holy shit! Like, all right, where's it going to go next? Type stuff. And I don't think the ending is disappointing. I've seen a couple people say it was disappointing. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed where it went, and yeah. I'm interested to see what else these guys do. So that's called Observation. It's from it's published by Devolver. It is available on the Epic Store. It's an Epic exclusive, I believe, and it's on PlayStation 4 as well. I think it's PlayStation 4. Yes, so check that out. It's not a lot of money. I think it's like $20 around there, $20 to $30. So in saying that, I checked out their other game that they made 2 years ago called Stories Untold, because it's free at the moment on Epic. If you go to the Epic Game Store, you can actually play this game for free, or you can add it to your library for free. I think it runs out I think it's next week is when it stops being free. I know a couple of people in our Discord channel pointed this out. At that stage, I'd already played Observation, and I'd already picked up Stories Untold, but I wanted to see sort of what else they'd done. And it's a very similar game in terms of like you are interacting with stuff in the world and like things on a screen and whatnot. In particular, Stories Untold is sort of like it's got like this 80s vibe going to it. Reminds me a lot of Stranger Things,
yeah, right,
I guess you could say, like the tone of it, and they're split up into 4 stories. And the first story, just to tell you a little bit about it, it's like you start off and you're looking at an old school like 70s computer, and there is a keyboard on the desk and a lampshade and a phone on the wall, and you're pretty much just like, that's all you can look at. You're not moving around, you're just looking at the screen. And all of a sudden, like the monitor flickers up and it's got a game on it. and it starts like text-based games. So it's like one of those old school, like Zork type tech-based adventures, and you start playing the game. So you start typing. It'll tell you like, your car is rocked up and there's a house in front of you. Like, what do you do? And it's like, all right, you can look around the car. Like, you like type look around, and it tells you what's in the car. There's a glove box. All right, open glove box. And then there's a note in the glove box and some keys, and then you leave the car, and you're all typing all this information, and you're eventually like uncovering this story as it goes along. And then eventually it goes places, and your sort of interaction with the world and the way things sort of unfold is in the span of probably about 40 minutes. Like, they're not long. They're not really long stories. Each one is about 40 minutes to an hour, depending on how quickly you can get through it. And then you go to the next one, and the next one is like you're looking at this room, and there's a bunch of equipment on the screen. There's like an X-ray machine and a drill and a monitor, and there's someone talking to you, and like they're running experiments, and they're trying to tell you like how to progress through the experiments. And then the third story is you on like an Antarctic station, and there's you're communicating with two other people, and they're trying to get you to run these experiments, and you're looking at this screen, and they're telling you input codes, and you can like look at another screen, and it's like telling you what you should be entering onto this screen, and like it's all this puzzle solving stuff again. And so all these like short stories are sort of different ways that you can again interact with the world, and they sort of just play out in these really interesting ways. I think that it's not anywhere near as good as Observation. I think Observation is like a solid 8-9 out of 10, whereas Stories Untold has a couple of design issues. Particular the text-based adventure thing can be a bit like nitpicky, because as someone who maybe hasn't played a lot of them, you might find a bit of trouble trying to figure out what you're supposed to do, because it doesn't really give you much information. It's kind of like, here's some basic commands, like look around or use key or things like that. Unless you don't, like, if you haven't played those types of games, it could be hard for you to sort of know what you're supposed to do. And then just some of the other stuff later on can be a bit finicky, but I like sort of the way that it tells the story that it's trying to tell. I didn't sort of, I didn't really see where it was going, but eventually when things unfolded, I was like, that's pretty interesting. And so it's kind of cool to see where that team has come from, and sort of how they evolved that idea of these, like, interacting with objects on a screen, like really basic stuff, and just the different ways they can like tell those sort of game mechanics and tie them into story elements. So it's called Stories Untold. It's on the Epic Game Store. It's free at the moment to play, and if you like that, maybe check out Observation, or at least check out, like, if you're not sure about Observation, watch like I don't know, like the first 5 minutes, see if that interests you. If it does, then jump in, because I think it's a unique game. Like, you don't see stuff like that, I don't think. So
no, I just brought it up now. I noticed there's a trailer as well, so it's probably better than it looks. I thought it had Xbox remotes on screen, but those must be PS4 DualShock controls, rather. Yeah. Not on my radar at all, but no, good to know. I actually added Stories Untold without even thinking about it today on autopilot. Like, just load up all my digital platforms. I'm like, free game, yep, click, click, click. Didn't even read what it was, so I have it.
Yeah. So it's the same guys, Stories Untold, Observation. Like, I think you can get a code for Observation. Just hit up, Devolver. So
yeah. No, I'm curious. But man, so many games to play. Like you seem to have so few games to play. So many games to play. Yeah. I still haven't finished Red Dead 2, man. Yeah. I mean, my Xbox died for a while, but got fixed really quickly. So that was awesome. But yeah, keen to go back to that. Got to finish Days Gone.
Yeah.
Got to like properly get into Horizon Zero Dawn, because I'm in this open world trend, and I feel like I really missed out there. Everyone keeps telling me, oh man, you got to go play that one. Don't finish Days Gone. Finish that. I'm like, So close
Yeah.
though. So yeah, I got to go back to Horizon. I do love my open world games, like for solo play. You know, when you just want to have one of those, you got like spare few hours. Like I want to play a game for a few hours. I really want to get immersed. I'm
Yeah.
really digging on open world games for that.
Hmm.
So it's good to have some in the bank. I guess it's bad that I haven't played more of some of the better ones. Sorry, Horizon people.
Yeah. All right, I think that's it for games. Unless there's anything else you can think of.
No, that was everything.
We've gone on for a while.
Covered every game in existence.
Let's go through some news quickly. Some surprising news: Sony and Microsoft have entered a partnership and are planning on collaborating on a new cloud-based solution for gaming experience and AI solutions as well. Pretty big.
It's weird, isn't it, to hear them go from like not being so opposed. I mean, last generation it was Microsoft when it was winning, saying no, we don't need cross-platform play, and Sony going we're open to it, to the script flip, right? No, we don't want we don't need cross-platform play, security, and all the bullshit. And now, finally, they've gotten to a place where they're like, everyone wins if we do this. Obviously, they've got to make sure they've got things set up right in the back end, but yeah, they get more people playing their games, man. Like it's very pro player, so that makes them look good.
Yeah, I guess where this sort of ends up is not really known at the moment. I mean, obviously they're going to be competing still on consoles and whatnot, but where this sort of evolves from, like what they're going to be doing with these solutions, these cloud-based solutions and AI and whatnot. They talked about Sony's going to be using like the Microsoft's cloud-based solution, the Azure network, and working with that sort of stuff. Obviously they've looked at what Google is planning on doing. Maybe they don't want Google eating up all their lunch, so they're going to start working together on some of this stuff, which is cool.
It makes sense. And I mean, there's I'm pretty sure it's still rumors at this stage. Rumors that there's going to be an Xbox app on Nintendo Switch for like streaming games. I mean, it's already possible. It's already been done with, what was it, Resident Evil in Japan, wasn't it, on Switch? Where you could stream it from the cloud. Like, obviously the Switch wasn't up to spec to run the newfangled version, but I'm pretty sure, that was an option. So the technology's also there, obviously, as long as you've got an internet connection that's good enough. Kind of a problem in Australia at the moment, and hopefully until, I don't know, whenever the NBN network finishes rolling out. I still don't have mine. But like the theory is that like the next generation's dropping in 2020, right? The rollout's supposed to be finished in 2020. Obviously, there's problems outside of that with acceptable speeds and things like that. But assuming that all gets sorted out, it means that Australia can finally technically be on the map for these kinds of services, whereas in the past we've kind of been left by the wayside because, what was that PlayStation one? Was it PlayStation Now or something? That was a streaming service for older, I think, PS1 and PS2 games off the top of my head. Like, we were never in consideration because across the board, our internet speeds were still, I'm pretty sure the average was closer to ADSL than it was to cable or NBN. And you got to have decent infrastructure. So once it happens, it'll be good to be considered for this kind of things and not miss out on things like Amazon. If it's going to be good, we know Xbox is pushing for its streaming service. I think EA has said it's got a streaming service. The biggest problem is it's going to end up being like Netflix versus Stan, and then insert every fucking body having their own. Like Disney's got one coming out. Like everyone wants to have their own bloody streaming service. Like that becomes the problem when you're paying for how many different services. Just
that's why this whole thing started in the first place, because nobody wanted to pay like $150 for all the cable channels.
Yeah, right. And now it's kind of resetting, and everyone's getting a bit greedy. It's almost like, how movies, every fucking movie IP wants to create its own cinematic universe because of the success of Marvel. It's like, oh, let's do it. But like, if you haven't planned it around that, then it always is going to feel shoehorned. So yeah, I don't know, man. Like I like the idea of, we talked earlier about mobile gaming and the problems with there not being enough good games, and like the idea of being able to get on a bus and playing some new gen game that I'm streaming on 5G internet or whatever. Like, I like the idea of that. But yeah, like there've been failures in the past. What was that one? I'm blanking on it. Oh, I used to talk about it quite a bit, but like GeForce Now is doing it, but again, not available in Australia. And there was one before that was a spectacular play on. No, something else. Anyways, their whole thing was, we have the high-end PC. We're going to stream it to whatever device you want. I think they were just too ahead of the time. And they ended up
like 6 or 7 years too early.
Yeah, they ended up going bankrupt. But the premise still stands, I think. Same as like VR, you know. There is a reason Facebook bought VR, and I don't even think it was necessarily or bought Oculus, because I don't think its idea was that the application was gaming. Gaming proves that the application has legs, but I think the real application of VR is, you know, concerts, holidays, being able to watch sports as if you're sitting there, kind of thing, like that level of immersion. And gaming as well. But I think that, if you want to sell VR to the mainstream, I don't think Facebook was like, this is gaming, we're all about gaming now. I think they're more interested in that longer play. Yeah, streaming games. I like the idea of it, but I do worry already that there's going to be 15 of them by the time, you know, the next gen rolls out. And it's like, so I've got to pay for my Xbox Live, and then I've got to pay for fucking EA, and then I've got to pay for Xbox Game Pass, and I've got to pay for Sony's thing. And it just becomes like me with my bloody video streaming services, where I basically have every single one that you can get, plus Hulu, and I still am not able to watch everything somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that, I mean, we had that PlayStation service where you could like stream it from your PlayStation to PC, because we played a couple of games like that.
Yeah, that's still up. I still use that occasionally, like if the TV's in use, with one of the two TVs. The people watching on Skype can see that, and they're probably getting jelly. I've been trying to block one with my head. There's two TVs! So that's kind of handy, you know? And even, like, it sounds silly, but you and me being able to talk on Discord instead of using PSN or whatever, like, was super convenient. PlayStation 4, PS4 Remote Play, I want to say. I think I've got it installed. Yeah, PS4 Remote Play. Same thing works on Xbox One app that's part of Windows 10. You can do it out of the box. I've used that before.
Yeah. It's all good, as long as it works.
As long as it works. It's all bandwidth, isn't it? Bandwidth and latency. You don't want the input delay on the controllers.
No.
And that's always been the problem. But for that, you need fast internet, and you need very good coding. But the fact that Amazon's interested in me, to me, means that it's viable. I mean, the fact that Microsoft has persisted for so long means it's viable, right? Like, I don't think they're going to keep talking about it if they don't really see the value in it, or it's not possible. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the last story we've got here, which is, it's about Rainbow Six Siege. Pro League Season 9 finals run on the weekends at Milan in Italy. I watched a bunch of it. I don't know if you watched any of it at all.
I did. I watched not the first lot. I watched Fnatic versus Empire. Team Empire, was it?
Fnatic versus Norengo, which Fnatic won that match in the quarterfinals 2-0. And then, which were pretty close games. They both went into overtime. And then the semifinals was Fnatic versus Team Empire from Russia.
Yeah, they lost the first map, and then they won the second map pretty convincingly, and then they lost the third map pretty convincingly. So it was good. It was up, it was down, but I'm glad it went to 2-1. It was just a shame that it wasn't more like you said, the Norengo one, where it was close, you know. But like, they did well. They did well against the second best team in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, Team Empire won the event, so.
Yeah, did they 2-zip, or was it 2-1?
They 2-1 Evil Geniuses.
Yeah.
But they were all pretty. At least the first two games were pretty close. Evil Geniuses won the first match on Bank, which was, I believe it was their map, and then Oregon went into overtime, a really good overtime. Was 8-6 to Empire, and then Clubhouse again. So this is the map that they played Fnatic on, where they 7-0'd them. They went 7-3 against EG on this map. So this is like let's not play Empire.
Vote them out.
Yeah, stop playing Clubhouse.
It's like you don't play Fnatic on Border, right? Isn't that like?
Yeah, Fnatic's pretty good on Border.
But I guess like all the top tier teams have more than one map that they really dominate on, and you can only ban one each, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but what happens at that point when you're EG and you're like, they just fucking stomped Fnatic 7-0 on Clubhouse? Maybe we'll have a better shot at that.
Unless you really back your play on Clubhouse, right? Or you've kept
Yeah.
your cards close to your chest and you've got something, then yeah, you'd be pretty intimidated and you do the safe ban on that. But they mustn't have been confident on the other maps then, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Um,
it'd be good to see. I hope Empire, like, I mean, if Empire is going to be the contenders, I hope they get up and beat who's the world champs. What am I blanking on?
G2.
Yeah, because
G2 didn't make it.
they didn't.
No, they got. I think they got third in the qualifiers for their region.
Wow, this is what I mean. The world of Rainbow Six is interesting. It's usually more interesting in the lead up to the World Cup in the last couple of years, at least. I think it was EG was pretty much they won the first two, or maybe they dropped. No, I'm pretty sure they did, or they came second in the first year, whatever way. And then G2 came along and just it was just basically all over. Although that first match, that first year with G2, right, we were there for the Invitational, and it went down to the wire on the coastline, right?
Yep.
And that was a map that G2 hadn't really played though, and that really showed that they were like, it doesn't really matter if you haven't fully prepped. It's just if you can adapt your strategy, and that's where the competitive meta shifted to that more like win your gunfights. Obviously, is always important, but also just like be ready to be reactive on the fly and don't be so reliant on a plan. Have a plan, but anticipate that plan will go out the window and be ready to roll with the fucking punches, right?
Yeah, right. They also revealed the new operators and the changes to Cafe. So Cafe is getting a rework. They moved a bunch of walls, changed some of the layouts of the actual environment, which looks pretty cool and interesting. But I guess the big new announcement is the new operators. They've got two. Both of them. Sorry, one of them is a defender. His name is Warden, which is basically a. He looks like a super spy, right?
Yeah, it's like James Bond. This is the first time I've seen a character where I think they're starting to take the piss a bit, you know?
Yeah.
Doesn't look terribly
the Australian
grounded.
guy was pretty.
Yeah, I guess that's fair enough.
Yeah. So basically, he's got this like watch and glasses that he can interact with, and it makes him be able to see through smoke when he's not moving, and also he's got glasses that'll prevent him from being flashed. So, sorry, he'll get flashed, but he's able to trigger this gadget, and the flash will basically disappear. So he'll be able to see through the flash, which is really beneficial for some people.
And it's the other one as well. If he has it active, he's immune to the flash. But if he gets flash without it active, he can activate it to remove the effects of the flash. Yeah, so you can use it proactively or reactively.
Yeah,
he's definitely
and there's like a cooldown on it.
Yeah, and he's definitely designed as an anchor though, because he's that 3 armor, 1 speed. So they want him to play on site.
Yeah, or at least like, I don't know, near a wall. Did you watch the Clubhouse game with Fnatic, right? Where they had like one player all the time up in that, sitting in the corner, and he would just sit there forever. Like you could stick him on there, and he couldn't get flashed.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, obviously he'll enter the game, or these two new operators will enter the game, but they don't enter the competitive scene until the season after. So we're going to start to see Mozzie and Gridlock enter the competitive scene like after, well, now, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what that impacts in terms of the meta. But the guy who's immune to flashes, like, that seems like... But like picking him would mean that you just wouldn't pick your operators who are flash heavy. So I'm wondering if that'll just sort of, it'll balance out. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. But the other one was the attacker operator, who is, I think it's pronounced Knock.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Knock.
Yeah, and it's a 2 armor, 2 speed operator who is basically like a vigil for the attackers.
Yeah, like a stronger vigil.
Yeah, so the attacker operator is immune to cameras, so when the gadget is deployed, her gadget's deployed, it renders her invisible to cameras, whether it be the cameras on site in the map, whether it be a camera gadget from some of the operators, because there's a bunch of operators that have different camera attachments. So basically anything that's camera, you won't see her on there anymore unless she is interacting with an object. Then that'll distort her image a little bit, so you'll be able to I don't know, like it'll be a little bit pixelated, I guess is a term to use. And again, this is like from what I understand, it's a thing you trigger, so it's got like a cooldown on it. So you run around in different. Is it a cooldown?
I think it's more like calves, in that you can kind of manage it. Like it has a meter that works its way down, and if it hits 0, then it has to fully reset. But if you kind of manage it on and off type thing, I'm pretty sure you can do it forever. I do. Yeah, that's my understanding from the video that they released explaining what she does.
Yeah. Yeah. So you sort of manage that and makes you invisible and whatnot. But it's like this mind game thing of she'll be able to move around the environment and people won't really know she's there, I guess.
Yeah, so for like your camera heavy stuff with Echo or Valk, it'll be interesting. Or even if Mozzie becomes it's almost like they've anticipated that Mozzie's going to become a big part of the meta, which I think is pretty fucking safe. And they've already introduced like a counter for the defenders having more control over surveillance. So yeah, I think that she is more interesting in terms of like the competitive meta than he is, the defender.
Yeah, I think they're both pretty middle tier,
like optional.
Or at least Whereas the gridlock, gridlock's interesting. Mozzie's really interesting. Like we'll see how they sort of play out in pro games.
Yeah, and the pick rate, like it's the most important thing, right? I'm struggling to struggling to think of the last operator that was like essential from the outset. Like Lion probably, but
yeah, I mean recently it's sort of been like Ash, like Mirror's getting a lot of bans still in.
Yeah, Mirror's still on auto ban. Echo's pretty much on auto ban sometimes as well.
Yeah.
So your intel gathering.
Anyway, some good changes coming up. That'll be. Are you getting some hands-on with this at some stage?
I am tomorrow, which I guess is today for people listening to this if it goes out on the Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And hopefully we'll have a chance to chat with one of the players from Fnatic as well.
About what happened? What the fuck went wrong?
Talk about what happened, but also to talk about, what's going to be happening with the Aussie operators in the competitive meta now that they've had a while to play with them, and also predictions, which I always love chatting to them about for these 2 new ops.
Yeah, interesting stuff. All right, I think that's it. That's all we got.
What? No, we've got another 3 hours, right?
Oh, do we? Okay. We could do that. I think we've got. Job sent through an email.
Oh, hi, Job.
But I don't know if we want to read it. Do you want to read it?
I don't have it.
No, I mean, like, I'm asking a question. Should we read it?
Is it garbage?
Have
you not read it?
I'm trying to find it.
Oh.
Here it is. It is, it's lengthy.
That's not like Job.
It's about Game of Thrones, though. He's very angry, it seems like.
Well, probably got spoilers in there. Can't talk about
the whole
that.
thing, yeah. He's talking about the ending.
Oh, well, save that for... What is he sending an email about that for? He should be ranting about that on the next episode.
He could be. But he's going to be very upset when he listens to 3 hours of this and we didn't read his email out.
Well, that's why we keep him coming back for more.
Yeah. All right, so should we leave it then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That was my choice, Job. Get wrecked.
Yeah.
That's what happens when Luke leaves it up to me. Sucker!
So without talking about spoilers, did you enjoy the ending?
I did.
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
Oh, you got up to speed. Damn.
I caught up in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Job said, "You're never going to do this. You fuck off." No, I was ready.
So doable. We did like all 6 seasons before season 7 came out, and that was like a few weeks. Like, I mean, we had to be pretty dedicated, but we did it.
Oh yeah, they're 10 episodes a season.
It's like 10 hours
except
roughly.
For the last 2, they're like 7 and 6, so yeah, manageable.
Yeah, it's got to be dedicated on the night.
For me, Job wasted 8 years of his life. I only wasted 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, that tells me he didn't enjoy it. I guess you'll have to listen. What, next week?
Yeah.
You going to be on next week?
Yeah, I'll be around.
Yeah?
Working my magic.
Alright.
Easy. All right, should we wrap things up then? We could do that. Let's kick things off with this podcast right here. It's called The Gap, or the GA Podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Android, Windows Store, all of those wonderful places. If you've got some time, please rate and review the show. Helps other people find it. Like I said, iTunes, Android, Windows Store, Spotify. We're on YouTube as well these days, so check us out. If you want to send us emails like Job, you can email us to gapodcast@gmail.com. You can also go to our Discord page, which is the gapodcast.com/Discord. We've got a bunch of channels up there, people playing games, a lot of people playing things like The Division recently, still people playing Battlefield every once in a while. I'm not sure who that is.
Yes.
I think it's you.
Very rarely these days. Nobody plays with me anymore. It's boring by myself.
Because we all got upset after fucking Firestorm. We're like, fuck that, I'm not touching it anymore.
Fuckers. Fucking dice.
Fucking dice. Ruin everything. You can also chat about a bunch of different things on there. People talking about video games. It's always good fun. Check out what people are saying, what we're being angry about. That's good. You can find us on social media, facebook.com/GAPodcast, twitter.com/GAPodcast, or you can go to our website, which is thegapodcast.com. It's got links to all the things we just talked about on the show, on the website, including past episodes of the show if you want to go check them out. Like the last time Nate was here on the 8-hour extravaganza.
It was 9.5, wasn't it? Fucking hell. Job was
Wasn't
upset
enough.
that we didn't crack 10. He wanted double digits. I'm like, you're a fucking nut.
You're crazy. Yeah. And that is all thanks to our Patreon members. If you want to help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/GAPodcast. Support the show. Thank you to everyone that does it every month. We greatly appreciate it. Helps us pay the bills. A couple days ago, I just renewed our domain and renewed our website. So at least another year of this you've got going on.
Woo!
So thank you to everyone that does that. And I think that is it. Is there anything you want to pimp out for your show?
Nah, we pre-pimped. I'm glad that we pre-pimped.
Yeah.
Let's just rewind to the beginning of the show and listen to that. I don't want to repeat it.
You got any writing? You got any writing going on?
Yeah, you read K-Zone magazine if you're a kid or one of those weird adults that still collects that mag, full respect. I write all the games pages in that. And Stack magazine of late, which you can find my articles on the website backdated, or the digital version of the magazine that's free in store you can find on their website, and flick through to find me writing about PC gaming hardware and games. And I think I've got some stuff coming up on IGN soon, but that's about it. Yeah, I've been pretty quiet apart from that.
Yeah, cool. You're going to E3 though. Your first E3.
My first E3 ever. Yeah. I'm telling you what,
Excited?
man. Fucking organizing schedules is a massive pain in my ass. Oh, man.
Is it full yet?
No, I'm surprised. I was like under the impression that if you hadn't locked shit in like 3 months in advance, then you basically just have to beg people to let you in. But no. I mean, there's a couple of games that have been like, it's full. And I'm like, you suck. But I've been told that by veterans that you can usually just rock up and people drop out and get your name put on a list or get them to text you. So I'm not too worried about that as long as I leave the gaps. But yeah, I've already locked in a bunch of stuff. I also want to see stuff across my publications, which covers everything from kids games through to mainstream games. And then I'm also touching hardware. So there's quite a bit. It's going to be very busy once it gets busy. I think my Tuesday to Thursday is pretty much going to be back to back. It's going to be cardio days, and I hate cardio. So lots of running.
As long as you leave like a 15-minute window between each appointment.
Nope, haven't done that.
You're fucked.
So my thing will be to map it out on the Monday and figure out where I've got to go. And if I've got to leave 10 minutes early to run somewhere and I don't love that game, I'm a leave.
Yeah. I'll ask you some questions. Have you heard anything about Cyberpunk yet? Because last year they sent out appointments directly through their website, and I don't think I've seen it this year.
Yeah, it's there. I've already got my appointment for that.
Through their website? Or through someone else?
Well, because once you sign up for E3 and you get registered as media, you get sent all the invites. So yeah, they approached me. Oh no, no, they didn't. No, Namco local organized it, and then there was a website for me to. They sent me a website to go to, and I signed up through that. I was honestly expecting it to be full, but there was still plenty of slots. Yeah. So I slotted in. I'm just really, interested in that game. Hopefully they give away a figurine again. Huh?
That'd be good. Maybe it's the same as last year's.
Maybe. Well, it's still going for what, $900 on eBay, man. What?
Yeah. How many games do you have on your list at the moment that are unannounced titles that they've told you the names of?
That they have told me the names of?
Yeah. Or have they told you they're unannounced games and we're not going to tell you what it is? Have you got some of those?
Yeah. I haven't got any of the other ones. I haven't got any where they're like, oh, actually, no, that's not fair. There's some that have said, like, unannounced title. But, like, a lot of it's just, Xbox block off 2 hours for hands-on, or your session, and same thing with Ubisoft. But then the individual appointments, I don't know. There's not so many surprises at the moment.
Yeah, it's like they've done the ones in the past where they've been like, oh, this is it's an unannounced David Cage game, or like this is like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. We haven't announced it yet. Surprise cat.
There he is.
But yeah, sometimes they're like, they'll tell you the game, but like, don't tell anybody this is coming out. But at that stage, everyone knows, like, there's a new Call of Duty coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually pretty safe to assume there's a Call of Duty game coming, right?
Yeah.
Have they not officially announced that yet?
No.
I thought they'd said that they were going to be talking about it at a certain point.
No, I mean, there was the news recently, like this week, that Sledgehammer is not working on the next Call of Duty. Treyarch's taken over, and Sledgehammer has been...
This one? Or the one that's coming next, right, okay.
I think so, something like that.
Yeah, I had heard rumblings. I didn't read up on it. Someone did mention that to me, though. It'd be interesting to see, if what's changed, what's different, whether they've gone crazy or it kind of sounds like, if that's the case, it sounds a lot like Modern Warfare 3, right? That thing where like the studio half makes it and then lots of people leave, so they've got to get help in to finish it off.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you have fun. It should be good. I'm interested to hear your thoughts when you come back.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of
work. You enjoyed it?
I think I will. Like, I've always enjoyed Gamescom, but Gamescom's always like similar. Like, you go back-to-back appointments and you run, and you either leave early or you hope that they're the kind of people who make it a half-hour session, but it's actually like 20 or 25 minutes, and
they're running 10 minutes late.
Yeah, you definitely hope that doesn't happen, because there'll definitely be some triage. Triage rather. It'll be like, how much do I love this game? Not enough. I'm just going to miss it and deal with the wrath of a PR person going, why didn't you turn up for this game that probably isn't that big a deal? Sorry, PR person.
Yeah. Rightio. All right, I think that is it. You can find me at twitter.com/LukeLawrie if you want to check out some of my things that I talk about. Not a lot, but anyway. I think that is it. Nate, thanks very much for filling in for your old boy Jobo.
Massive boots. Impossible to fill.
Couldn't be here. I'm disappointed that we didn't hit the 4-hour mark, to be honest.
What did we get up to?
3. Probably around about 3.
Oh, that's boring.
Yeah, that's pathetic. That's what that is. But we'll get you on, again, maybe after E3. We'll find out what you're...
Yeah, it'll be like, all right, here's Nate to talk about E3 for 5 hours. I'm like, I'll play this, I'll play this, and this sucks, and all like that.
Yeah.
Good times. That's what you want, right?
All right, man. Thanks very much. Catch everyone later.